spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time.
Williams who scores, and Spain lead. A shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, Oivamo slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia. These are the missiles that Biden has approved.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your site.
Hello, a very good morning to you just after 6 o'clock on Thursday, January the 2nd. I'm David Bull, in for Mike Graham. This, of course, is Morning Glory. A very good morning to you. Well, coming up in today's programme, America under attack. Now, first of all, New Year's celebrations were rocked in New Orleans after a pickup truck was rammed into a crowd of revelers, killing at least 15 people. Then, in Las Vegas, a Tesla Cybertruck burst into flames outside the Trump Hotel, killing one person. Elon Musk suggests that both incidents were acts of terrorism and potentially linked in some way. Now, meanwhile, Musk has also turned up the temperature on Labour's Jess Phillips, who has shut down calls from Oldham Council for a public inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. Plus, Keir Starmer introduces new laws to tackle people smuggling gangs, but do you think they go far enough? So the idea behind this is criminals could face bans on travel, on internet, and on mobile phone usage. Now, don't forget, I really want you to get involved this morning. You can get involved in the conversation. Send us a voice note, the number 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. And, of course, on X, it's at talkTV. Well, a very good morning to you. Happy a new year. January the 2nd, a year full of optimism and hope, and yet shattered so quickly when we read the front pages this morning. Let me just take you through the headlines this morning. If you are just waking up, this is the front page of the Times. Terrorist truck attacker kills 10 in New Orleans. We'll talk more about this in detail, exactly what happened, the methodology that was used, and, of course, the extraordinary loss of life and the eyewitness accounts from there. Also, the front page of the Mail has the same story. New Orleans killer had ISIS flag on truck. I'll tell you more about this, but this man who was involved in this incident had served in the US military. He had an honourable discharge from the US military, and of course the FBI combing through his records as we speak. The Daily Telegraph, same story as well. IS cell behind New Orleans terror. So this is what the FBI is saying. They do not believe this is a lone wolf attack. They believe many other people are implicated in this. Also, explosive devices found, improvised explosive devices as well. We'll bring you all the latest on that. The Guardian this morning, 10 dead after truck flying IS flag drives into crowd in New Orleans. And the Mirror sums it up rather well, I think. America under attack on day one of 2025. The Daily Express, same story. Terror driver hell-bent on carnage kills 10. Other stories are in the papers as well, but that is the big story that you're waking up to this morning. Joining me this morning, Matthew Goodwin-Freeman, who is a political commentator. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Happy New Year.
And to you, and to you. It's always so horrific to burst the bubble of a new year, which is full of optimism and hope, and this is New Year's resolutions, isn't it? This is when people think, well, 2024 was pretty bad. I didn't enjoy that year. We're going to turn the page. This is 2025. And you're hit with these horrific headlines from New Orleans. And, of course, this is all about, as I was saying, this terrorist with suspected links to IS drove a pickup truck. I cannot get my head into the mentality of someone who willfully wants to kill and maim as many people as they possibly can.
And especially on a day where everyone is celebrating. As you said, it's about looking forward to the new year. The message here in London was about hope for a better year. And it's so sad that we wake up and hear that this is going on. I mean, you know, as you said, the terrorist, now named as Shazman Din Jabbar, 42, US national, served in the military. He sped into a crowd in America and killed, now the number's up to 15 and injured at least 35. It's genuinely shocking. It's one of those things where you look at videos online and you go, this could happen. There's no barricades, there's no protection.
Well, so this
is in the middle of a community.
So this is really interesting because there are barricades, but they were taking them out. They were in the process of actually replenishing those barricades to make them more, I suppose, proof from these kind of attacks. And we know certain details are now unravelling about this. An IS flag was found on the rented vehicle. This is according to the FBI. Other improvised explosives as well. As I said, the FBI now very clear that he didn't act alone, that this was an organised, orchestrated attack.
Yeah, well, he was found in full military gear. He was killed in a shootout with officers at the time. As you said, they found the vehicle ready with pipe bombs, guns also in there with concealed coolers. He had wires for remote detonation, and corresponding remote control was discovered in the vehicle. I mean, it was a proper attack, and it could have been far, far worse, which is the scary thing. But as you said, not acting alone, and that's the sad thing, because individuals like this are far harder to track and keep an eye on compared to large, planned, orchestrated attacks. So this is worrying for America, I'm sure.
The detail that's emerging is that Jabbar was born in Texas, as we said, served in the US military. He had begun a conversion into Islam within the last year. Now, that has come from his own family, actually. Now, the road that he drove this car down is Bourbon Street, which you mentioned. It's famous because it has bars and clubs. It's known for its raucous revelry. It really is the epitome of sort of New Year's Eve celebrations. But obviously, that sort of freedom of expression and hedonism, I suppose, in many ways, is exactly what IS followers hate and loathe about the West.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that we believe in freedom, the fact that we believe in diversity and allowing people to say and think what they want, well, most of the time. You know, that's the problem. That is the big problem. It is a direct attack on our Western values and our Western culture, and that's why this is going to be such a big thing over the next few weeks as this gets investigated, as they find out more about not only him, but anyone else that he was connected to. And obviously we did have that second incident at the Trump Tower in Texas, which I know we'll go on to.
We will, yeah.
And that could be the first linked event. We don't know. They're looking into it.
And that's what Elon Musk is saying.
And that's a real worry, because America then, our closest ally, is under attack.
Yeah. Now, obviously, President Biden, in the throes of his outgoing presidency, he addressed the nation. He spoke about the terrorist attack in New Orleans. This is what he said.
The FBI is leading the investigation to determine what happened, why it happened, whether there was any continuing threat to public safety. Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill, The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby.
That's President Biden addressing the nation. Obviously, President Biden there calling the attack a despicable and heinous act. Of course, only 18 days to go until President Trump, or President-elect Trump, assumes office. Now, Donald Trump has also seized this attack, appearing to blame foreign criminals, linking it to illegal migration. His son, Donald Trump Jr., also posted on social media Biden's parting gift to America, migrant terrorists. They do say in politics, never let a catastrophe go to waste.
Yeah, and we're literally 18 days away from President Trump 2.0. So, I mean, the timing of this is shocking and incredible as well. And I just want to pay tribute quickly to one of the victims, who was a recent graduate, a university student, Nikira Dodo. It's so sad to see someone celebrating the new year, getting ready for what would be a fantastic year, coming straight out of university and being killed so soon into it. It's genuinely one of those things where we talk about attacks, we talk about when things happen, and as if they're this far-off, distant thing, and then it happens really close time. And we had it here in the UK. We had an attack on Christmas Day where a car was rammed into people celebrating. We had Germany. They had their attack in a Christmas market just days before Christmas. I'm sorry, but this is the world that we're living in. These attacks that feel so far away are actually getting really close.
I think you make a great point. These attacks are not faceless. You mentioned there Nikira, an 18-year-old aspiring nurse from Mississippi. That gives it the human aspect to this, a young lady who had her life ahead of her. Two other victims named as father of two, Reggie Hunter, 37, from Baton Rouge in Louisiana, a former American football player, Princeton graduate, Tiger Beck, 27, Nicole Perez, 28, a mother of one. Very young people, which is what you would expect at New Year at 3:15 in the morning.
People from all walks of life coming together to celebrate the new year. And that's the sad thing. Often in these attacks, we forget the people behind, the people who actually are lost as a result. They just become numbers, and I think it's really important to remember that there are people at the heart of this.
Now, you mentioned the other incident that occurred. Now, this is a separate incident which has taken place in Las Vegas. Police are investigating this because, as you can see here, this is a Tesla Cybertruck, one of the new Tesla models, which was parked outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas in Nevada. It was filled with fuel canisters, firework, mortars. These aren't just little fireworks. These are great big kind of vats of fireworks. These are mortars. These are intended to cause a real pain and suffering. Now, the interesting thing about this truck was rented in Colorado. The vehicle that we were talking about in Louisiana was rented as well, both rented from the same company. And that obviously is a lead that they will be following up closely on.
Well, this is the thing. So, as you said, These are not your small firecrackers that you can go get from the local supermarket. These are not small things that you play around with. This was, again, another, statement moment. It's really interesting that they chose a Tesla, obviously, and parked it outside the Trump Hotel. A little nod there to Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Obviously, the two working together, ready to take over in the White House in just 18 days' time. It certainly is a message, and it's certainly something that's going to be investigated more and more. What I do like, though, is it just gives a little nod to how strong Tesla's cars are, because if you have a look at the Cybertruck, it's actually done pretty well, given the fact it effectively had a massive bomb in the back seat. So, no, it's again, obviously, one person's been killed. We believe that was the driver of the car, so could be a self-detonating device, obviously, but again, it's another instant, very conveniently at the same, around the same time, and yeah, it's another statement.
You see, with a name like Shamsuddin Bahar Jabbar, now I know he's a US national, but there will be people waking up this morning here in the United Kingdom, also in the United States, around Europe, saying, hang on a minute, this is linked to immigration, and that is what Donald Trump is saying as well. I get the sense that we're at a very pivotal moment. I was talking about this earlier with the team, saying that in many ways people are starting to say the unthinkable about the levels of migration into the United States, into the United Kingdom, for example, open doors policy, and that is what Trump has vowed to stamp down on in the United States, and that is also what people are increasingly voting to do here in the United Kingdom.
Well, you say the unthinkable. I actually think it's the common sense opinions. I actually think it's the opinions that a lot of people think inside. They'll talk about around the dinner table, but then when they're out in public, they don't dare say it because they're scared of being labelled any-ist, racist, sexist, any phobist, any of these sorts of things. Actually, we're getting to a point where this is reality. This is happening now. In 2025, this is going to keep going on.
But this is about having shared values.
Yes.
Or the lack of shared values, actually. And I think this comes back to a much bigger issue, which is you are welcome to come to this country or the United States, but you abide by the laws of that country and the values of that country. And if you can't subscribe to that, you are not welcome.
3 things. Be proud of the Union Jack. Be happy to wait in a queue and don't only complain about the weather. That's what you've got to do.
Well, that's very true indeed. Thank you for the moment, Matthew. Let me throw that open to you this morning, just in terms of what you've heard. This attack in Louisiana, also in Las Vegas as well, whether or not they are related. Of course, Donald Trump jumping on that. Joe Biden giving an address on this as well. This is day 2 of a brand new year. What are your thoughts this morning? How concerned are you? And is my point pertinent, saying that actually this is a tipping point where people are beginning to say enough is enough? We cannot have people coming into our country or the United States who do not share our value set. Your thoughts on all of that, please, this morning. The number 0344 499 1000, calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. We'll take a break. After the break, we'll go through more of this morning's front pages and all the stories that you need to know this morning as you are waking up. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
This is Morning Glory, 6:21, Thursday, January the 2nd. I'm David Bull in for Mike Graham. If you are waking up, we're talking about the front pages this morning. This is the Telegraph IS cell behind New Orleans terror. This is a man who drove a vehicle, killing 10 people, shot dead. The FBI says he is not working alone. There's also been an incident in Las Vegas as well, where a Cybertruck was parked outside the Trump Hotel. That then exploded as well. As you can see, Elon Musk saying that it appears that these incidents are linked. The FBI are investigating exactly what happened. That truck packed with explosives and mortars and obviously parked outside the Trump Hotel. He says that Elon Musk appears likely to be an act of terrorism. But that ongoing investigation in the United States, all of the papers full of that story. And in fact, it's the Mirror, I think, that has the pithiest headline this morning: America under attack. That is not something people wanted or expected to wake up to on the second day of a brand new year, when people had hope and aspiration and were intent on making sure that this year is better than the last. Let's move on now and talk about the front page of the Times. There's another article here. Matthew Goodwin Freeman joins me this morning, political commentator. Let's talk about this because this is a big story in the Times. And just in terms of people smuggling, immigration, we know immigration is the #1 concern for people as we come into the local elections and then obviously into the general election. It actually goes immigration, or immigration, economy, and then the NHS, in that order. Now, what they're saying this morning in this: anyone suspected of being involved in people smuggling or other serious crime will face bans on travel, internet, or mobile phone use under an expansion of court orders designed to crack down on small boat crossings. Now, essentially what the Home Office is saying is they're going to get tougher because it takes so long to impose any kind of restrictions on people. What, losing your mobile phone? Is that really going to be a deterrent?
Well, we know for a fact that most people lose their mobile phone crossing the channel anyway, because we've all seen the videos of them chucking it into the channel. 100%. So, I mean, this is just Labour talking tough, and then the actions are so weak. It's more state intervention, state control, state
But they're going to
involved.
smash the gangs.
Well, they're not, because it's already going up. We've seen last year now, 2024, saw crossings rise by 25%.
Indeed.
So they can talk tough as much as they want, but it's going in the wrong direction. The year before, 2023, crossings were down 33%. So already a reverse, back up again, hotels opening up, but hey, we'll take away your phone and internet use.
Well, also, just in terms of last year, it was one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous year to cross the channel. And of course, Keir Starmer has this border security, asylum and immigration bill which is coming in. They need to do something. They need to act. They know the public is not on their side. We saw the approval ratings for Starmer nosedive as a result of the policies they've enacted. And I think one of their biggest errors was to bin Rwanda. It didn't matter whether didn't matter whether it worked or not. Because you had some sort of deterrent, and we saw that many people were actually going to Ireland, so in some ways it was working, and not a single plane had taken off.
I have said so many times before, regardless of whether anyone actually went to Rwanda, the deterrent was working. Crossings were down 33%. Ireland were saying that we have so many people coming here now instead of the UK, we need to send them back to you. And we were saying, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole point. It was working.
So why did he bin it on day one?
It was one of those things where it's a brilliant thing. We're gonna get rid of this. We're gonna start a new change. This is the flagship of the Tory government. But the point was, you can't get rid of something and have no replacement. You can't change it and replace it with words. The word "smash the gangs" does nothing. It does nothing without action behind it, and that's what we've seen throughout last year.
Well, Labour says, well, we've got a border security command now. It brings together the agencies of the NCA, the MI5, Border Force, the CPS. They say there are investigations going on. They're working with their European partners. Look, at the end of the day, the European partners may well want to play to some degree, but ultimately they'll think people in this country is our problem.
And also, remember, we're sending France £500 million a year to go and deal with this problem. Are they dealing with it? No. If anything, they let the boats go off and and say, that way for England, thank you very much. It's utterly ridiculous.
And
they're not taking action. They've got to stop this. We've got to turn the boats back. We've got to stop this because people in Britain are fed up. You can't get a GP appointment. You can't get a dentist appointment. You can't get your local services. Yep. And I'm sorry, but when you have... And I've been happy to criticise the Conservative government in the past. You know, I'm not an MP, haven't been an MP, happy to hold my hand up and say, we mess things up. But now, Labour are in charge and they can't talk words, they've got to talk action.
Let's just look at the total numbers, and these are absolutely shocking. More than 150,000 illegal migrants have crossed the Channel since the small boats crisis began. Just to put that into perspective, 150,000 people, that is a town the size of Cambridge, Ipswich, Blackpool, coming in to this country, and as you said, as a result of that, we have no infrastructure, schools, hospitals, GPs and all the rest of it. And of course, then Labour majors by saying we're going to build 1.5 million homes. Well, but if you look at the actual sheer numbers of illegal and legal migration, it's a drop in the ocean and it will never work. Let's also talk about another story this morning, which is the council by-elections. Labour has lost 5 times as many council seats as it's won since the general election. This is new analysis they've found. Obviously, 6 months in, they lost 33 council seats in by-elections across England, Scotland and Wales. They gained only 6. So the top line is Labour's gone down 33. The Tories, actually, to their credit, have gone up 24. Reform has gone up by 7. Lib Dems and the Greens, only 2 each. So there is a huge kind of shift, a seismic shift going on in British politics.
Yeah, at the last election, it was people are fed up with the Tories, go and vote anywhere else. That's what happened. Or people just stayed at home and didn't vote. What we're seeing now is people are already fed up of Labour. We're done. And people want to go anywhere else. And what we're seeing is reform, being able to fill the void where we're not having policies coming out by the Conservative Party, we're not having this new agenda in this opposition, filling that void and gaining a lot of support. Credit to the Conservative Party and credit to Kemi Badenoch starting to turn things around and showing this sign of unity and things like that. But voters at the end of the day are fed up. And I was looking actually at the analysis. The words that were being said about the Labour Party when you asked people in the opinion polls about Labour was incompetent, dishonest, liars. Weren't those all the things they said the Tories were just before the election? How funny it is.
Well, this is analysis done by Lord Hayward, who I interviewed on this programme, actually, yesterday. And he said, just in terms of this electoral cycle, this is unprecedented to be this unpopular so early on. Labour has experienced its worst set of results since the budget. And this all, really, the marked disapproval of Labour started with I'm going to be careful what I say here, but with the extrapolation of the truth, shall we say, about the size of the fiscal hole, and if it is 20 billion, then raising 40 billion, and that's when confidence went off a cliff.
Well, they lied. I'm happy to say it. They absolutely lied.
I was being gentle.
No. Good morning. Let's speak to the facts. They lied to the British public. I said it on day one. They have sold you a pup. They've told you a bunch of things they're going to do, and they've broken every single one. And they can talk about, oh, well, we never said this exactly, or we never said that exactly. That's not the point. The British public don't like being
OK, so Lord Hayward says the test is going to be the local elections in May. I totally agree with him. And when we see people who are so angry, this is when the local elections reflect that, the depth of anger. What do you think will happen in the locals?
Well, Labour need... Well, the two things. Firstly, these local elections come 4 years after we had, for the Conservative Party, the Boris boost, the vaccine boost, just coming out of COVID. So for the Conservative Party, it's a high watermark anyway. But for Labour, the really telling thing is going to be how many of their voters now stay at home and say, no, not a chance. Because local elections have a very low turnout too, and that could scupper them in a lot of seats. But remember, between now and the next general election, we have every type of election. Local, council, county, mayoral, Wales, Scotland.
Well, it also depends if they have unitary authorities, and of course, stymie the system. They may get rid of them entirely.
Get rid of those councils they're going to lose.
But I said this yesterday, Wales is going to be very interesting to watch as well. There is real anger in Wales about the Labour-run administration there, so those results will be interesting to watch. But also, I think what we're seeing is that the end of the two-party politics. You know, tribally, people were Conservative or Labour, or they were and other. That is not the case anymore. The fluidity is much greater.
Yeah, voters are fluid. Voters are educated about politics now. They get involved, they understand what's going on, and they choose who is best to suit them there and then. And that's the biggest thing. You can't rely on, oh, I've always voted for you now, because that doesn't matter anymore. People are willing to listen and willing to change opinion, and that's worrying for Labour and obviously the Conservatives too.
Yeah, and based on headlines like today's, of course, immigration rears its head yet again.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this other story in the Telegraph. NHS obesity treatment quadruples in decade. I mean, these are awful statistics. 1.9 million hospital episodes of treatment for patients with a diagnosis of obesity. This is in 23-24. That has gone up from 442,000. And this covers all patients with a diagnosis of obesity, whether it's a primary or a secondary diagnosis. Now, it goes on, this article, to talk about the use of injections, you know, the GLP-2 agonists, those ones, semaglutide, Wegovy, all of those kind of drugs. But I just wonder, where is personal responsibility in any of this?
Well, isn't January supposed to be the month that everyone takes out a gym membership and then quickly cuts it up by February?
Yeah.
I mean...
Or by tomorrow.
Personal responsibility are the two words. At the end of the day, it is not the state's job to make you watch your waist size. It's not the state's job to tell you, stop eating too much of that and start eating some more of that. I mean, when I was growing up, it was you have your plate of dinner, you've got a section of greens that you might not want to eat, but you're going to have to eat them or else you aren't leaving the table.
Correct.
Now, you know, nowadays it's chicken nuggets and deep fried this and fried that and whatever. At 1.9 million hospital visits in 23-24 to do with obesity. 10 years ago, it was less than 500,000. What on earth is going on?
So just in terms of that, and I just want to finish on this point. So NICE has recommended weight loss injections for patients who are, we would say, obese, morbidly obese. So a BMI of more than 35, and you have to have on top of that one weight-related illness. So that is 3.4 million people. Now the NHS can't afford to do that, so they are actually going to treat 220,000. But when you start looking at the cost to the health service at £11.4 billion, because people can't control their fingers and what they're eating, and they don't cook, and we're reliant on processed foods, the NHS cannot survive if you continue with that kind of behaviour.
Well, the thing with the NHS is it burns through £1 million every 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Every 4 minutes. So since the time we've been on air, we've burned through millions and millions of pounds. That is the biggest problem. If people suddenly want everything to be dealt with by the NHS, then that's going to go through the roof. And we can't do that. The NHS is already on its knees. We've got to make sure things are actually working efficiently and working to fix the serious issues.
I paid for it. It's free. It's free at the point of need.
There you go.
I paid for it.
So there you go. Have as many takeaways as you want. Have as many takeaways as you want. Do what you want, because, hey, the NHS will fix it for you, won't they? It's ridiculous.
And this is why it's actually a very complicated conversation to have with people, because there is an element that, well, I've paid for it, therefore it should be there to treat me.
And often you can't, because if you use the word obesity, oh, you're very offensive. If you say this or say that, you offend someone. Well, I'm sorry, offence is there to be taken, not given.
Well said indeed. Right, let's take a voice note. This is James talking about immigration. Good morning to you.
Good morning, David. Happy New Year to you. Just regarding the illegal immigration, why can't these politicians find a backbone and just say it as it is? I mean, for Christ's sake, this is getting way out of hand now. Anyway, mate, have a good rest of the day.
Thanks. Thanks ever so much, James. I mean, that's the point, isn't it? Actually, there are parties out there saying exactly as it is, i.e. illegal migration, turn the boats back, declare a national emergency under the UN Conventions of the Sea 1951. You are perfectly entitled to do that. You stick the Royal Navy in the Channel, job done.
The problem with this is the Royal Navy refused to turn the boats back when Priti Patel tried it.
But that's not the Royal Navy are there at the command of the government.
Well, this is the thing. Would you start court-martialling the Royal Navy?
Yes.
You know, all these sorts of things.
If you disobey policy, yes.
Yeah, and then the second thing is obviously our favourite friends, the civil service. Because what the civil service do is they take all the options that are on the table, get rid of most of them and say, oh, here's the nice two fluffy ones that we like. You can only pick between them. They don't exist. That's the the two stickers in this are the fact that people have to do as they're ultimately commanded, and the people who run the government end up choosing what we decide.
But that's why we need a charismatic leader who knows his or her own mind, who actually says, this is the way we are doing this. And that's what we're going to see in the States with Trump, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And I actually think Trump coming into power is going to change the dynamic, the global dynamic, quite significantly. Matthew, thanks very much for the moment. We'll take a break. After the break, we'll go through more of this morning's top stories. Get in touch, please, as well, on those terror attacks that we've been talking about in New Orleans and also in Vegas as well. Your thoughts this morning, are they linked? That's certainly what the FBI are beginning to think. Of course, they're thoroughly investigating what is going on with both the Cybertruck which exploded outside the Trump Hotel in Vegas, packed with explosives. Also, this man who was shot dead, who then drove his vehicle into packed crowds of revelers celebrating what should have been a wonderful new year. How do you feel this morning? 0344 499 1000. Calls charged at the national rate. This is Morning Glory.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Good morning. This is Morning Glory, 6:38 on Thursday, January the 2nd. The headlines this morning, the Daily Telegraph, IS cell behind a New Orleans a terrorist with suspected links to Islamic State drove a pickup truck into crowds of people celebrating the New Year on one of America's most famous party streets. This is Shamsuddin Bahar Jabbar. He's 42, a US national. He served in the US military, was given an honourable discharge. He sped into revelers on Bourbon Street in the heart of the French Quarter, killing at least 15 people. We now know at least 35 people are injured. Now, this story has developed overnight. An IS flag has been found in the rented vehicle. Also, there has been a separate incident in Las Vegas with a Cybertruck which exploded outside the Trump Hotel in Vegas. Elon Musk very quick to say these are two related incidents. Now, the FBI are now looking into this. The latest news on this is authorities are looking into a possible military connection between the suspect in the New Orleans attack and a man who died in a Tesla Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. Now, as I was saying, both incidents had a rental car. Both of those rental cars came from the same place. This is Turo. It's a car app to rent vehicles. As a result, law enforcement are looking into the fact that both men used that app, the Turo car app, to rent the vehicles used in both incidents. Well, let's get the very latest. Dan Warren, who is a talk producer, was there. He's now in Los Angeles, and he joins us now. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning, David.
So you were actually in Vegas at the time of this explosion. Where were you? Where was the explosion, and what was the fallout from this?
Well, basically, I'd spent New Year's Eve in Vegas, and funny enough, was discussing with the people I was with about the well, not lack of security, but there seemed to be a lot of security in the centre of the Strip, but the northern part of the Strip, which includes where the Trump International Hotel is, it seemed to have there wasn't just for pedestrians. It was business as usual. And I was actually saying to somebody, well, you can see if something's going to kick off, it would be in this area. Now,
just so for people who aren't familiar with Vegas, the Strip is one long road, isn't it, which is lined by hotels on both sides of that. Huge, great hotels either side. And, of course, Vegas is known for its New Year's revelry. It's an event that many people attend. Was it ticketed this year?
No, it wasn't ticketed. It was pretty much a free-for-all. Usually, you're normally confined to your hotel. So wherever you're staying, they encourage you to stay around there. But this time it was, they brought in a few regulations, no push chairs, no backpacks, and no glass bottles. They were the only rules. Everything else was allowed. We actually went to a multi-story car park next to the Trump Hotel to watch the fireworks and thought security are clearly going to move us on here because it's, you know, this could be a risk, and security didn't care. In fact, at one point it looked like a scene from Fast and Furious of all these cars pulling up at the top of this multi-story car park. And I was saying at the time, this really doesn't seem that secure. You know, God forbid something happen. Obviously, I woke up to the news of the horrific event in New Orleans, and then as we were driving and leaving Vegas this morning, we passed the Trump International Hotel and saw a Tesla Cybertruck. I don't know if it was the one that it exploded, and a member of the group that was with me had never seen one before and was, what the heck is that? So we're talking about it, and about just before we got to the state line with California, we saw another one that had been pulled over by the police, and then 20 minutes later suddenly all the news flashes came that one had exploded out of the Trump outside the Trump Hotel. We do understand that the driver came from Colorado, arrived in the Strip around about 7:30 local time this morning, or New Year's Day morning, and spent an hour cruising up and down the Strip before parking up outside the hotel, and about 15 seconds later the vehicle exploded.
Which is highly strange behaviour, to cruise up and down for an hour outside the Strip, or up and down the Strip.
Yeah, indeed, and we're just getting US media sources are indicating that, like the New Orleans suspect, the Las Vegas suspect has a connection with the US military and is apparently a member of the Green Berets, or the US Army Special Forces. That news coming through as we speak from a variety of US media sources on the news network. So very similar background. It would appear, obviously, these are not confirmed. The investigations are still going. And
is there any sense with this driver that there was a similar story to Jabbar? Jabbar had begun to convert to Islam. We know that. That's according to his family. They told US media that on Wednesday night. Is there any sense that we have a similar story unfolding from the driver who was killed, who parked that Cybertruck outside the Trump Hotel?
Not at the moment. They are searching numerous properties in Colorado. Apparently one person has been detained. Again, that's citing US media sources. But everything else at this stage is just speculation. But the parallels are there, hence why Elon Musk had stated earlier that, linking both incidents together. But President Biden clearly stating that there is nothing to report on in terms of any link between the two incidents at this stage.
I mean, it beggars belief that you are allowed to drive a Cybertruck filled with fuel canisters and firework mortars down the main strip of Las Vegas on New Year's Eve. That beggars belief.
It's unbelievable, because I was the designated driver, one of the downsides of being teetotal. So therefore, I was actually quite concerned about getting in and out of Vegas, because it's bad enough on a normal day, never mind New Year's Eve. Drove in to the Strip, no problem. And this morning I was expecting to see the party still going, and actually no security, nothing. It literally just looked like a normal Wednesday morning in Las Vegas.
Dan, thanks ever so much. We're pleased you're safe, and thank you very much for bringing us up to speed with all the latest. That's Dan Warren, their talk producer in Los Angeles. If you are just waking up, we're talking about the headlines in all the papers this morning. IS cell behind this terror attack in New Orleans, where the vehicle was driven at speed into as many people as the driver could possibly affect. He killed 10 in this New Year massacre. He was shot dead. The FBI says he isn't working alone. They're following up those leads. As I said, the car was actually rented from an app, and it's also the same app has been used to rent the vehicle that was seen, that Tesla Cybertruck, outside the Trump Tower in Las Vegas. The question I'm asking this morning is, how does that make you feel? This is the beginning of a new year where we're meant to be optimistic, where we're hoping for world peace, where we hope there will be a breakthrough, for example, in Ukraine and the various wars around the world. But here we are, day 2, and already a terrorist attack. And as the Mirror very pithily says, America under attack. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. We'll take a break. After the break, we'll bring you up to speed with even more of this morning's stories. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
Saturday night, and you lucky people have got 4 of Talk's mightiest personalities in one room. I mean, what could go right? Me, Jeremy Kyle, Michael Graham, Julia, I'm Not Grumpy Tonight, Hartley Brewer and Kev O'Sullivan. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
What are you thinking? Jules is smiling.
I think they've made us all look a lot better than we actually look.
There
I know what to ask for next time I go to the hairdresser.
I'd like to talk about Jez's nipples on his...
You got nipples? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
he's got nipples.
I don't know. I didn't think you had nipples. I assumed you just came in an egg.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Back. This is Talk Morning Glory. Good morning. 10 to 7, Thursday, January the 2nd. A new year. Horrors in America unfolding. Good morning, David. Enough is enough. Feeling sorry for other nations and their people. That's Sean in Norfolk. Thank you. You can't smash the gangs. The war on drugs has taught us that. You take one out, another one then takes its place. I'm asking this morning, how do you feel about these terror attacks, which we believe may well be linked? What's gone on in New Orleans, also in Las Vegas as well. The FBI continuing their investigation. Currently, authorities are now looking into a possible military connection between the suspect in the New Orleans attack and a man who died in the Tesla Cybertruck explosion in Vegas. Law enforcement are already looking into the fact that both men used, as I keep saying, this Turo car app to rent the vehicles used in both incidents. Now, Elon Musk very quick to jump onto this and to say that actually the two incidents are linked. Musk has tweeted it appears likely to be an act of terrorism. Both this Cybertruck and the F-150 suicide bomb in New Orleans were rented from Turo. Perhaps they are linked in some sort of way. So that is Elon Musk. I'm joined this morning by Matthew Goodwin Freeman, who is a political commentator. Let's take you through some of the other stories this morning. This is the Telegraph, page 10. Trans police allowed to pick warrant card to suit. What is this? So basically you can identify as whatever you like and carry a warrant card as deemed appropriate by yourself based on the hour, day, week, month of the year.
Pretty much. This is one of those confusing stories which you read and think, is this a joke? You know, I know it's New Year's, but we're quite far away from April Fools. 11 of the 47 constabularies in England have said that they give trans police officers allowed to carry multiple warrant cards depending on the gender identity they choose as a result of this Freedom of Information request. 2/3 of police forces were also found to let trans officers who are biologically male to use women's showers, lavatories and changing rooms.
But that's unacceptable.
Well, this has been criticised by women's rights campaigners, MPs. It doesn't put the safety of females, biological women, at the heart of it. It's ridiculous. Now, their argument is that this is being gender fluid and it's supporting diversity, but at the end of the day, you get into a situation where female police officers, suspects and victims are put at risk for the very, very, very few. Frankly, I don't care what the officer is, who they think they are, or what they identify as. I care that they're arresting the bad uns and putting them behind bars. That's what I care about.
I mean, it's interesting. Mayor Forstater, the executive director of Sex Matters, told the Daily Mail, allowing any man, whatever he calls himself and whatever he is wearing, to walk into women's showers, changing rooms and toilets, or to search, and this is really important, to search, including strip search women, is a violation of women's dignity and an abuse of power. I totally agree.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, this is one of the things where we take a bit of reassurance that if you're a man, you'll be searched by a man. If you're a woman, you'll be searched by a woman. And now this throws this all up in the air. And at the end of the day, we've got to make sure victims are the ones we care about most in the justice system, not someone's identities.
Let's move on and talk about the era of cheap Russian gas to the EU ends. This is really interesting because there is a pipeline that basically transfers gas from Russia through Ukraine. Russian gas has stopped flowing to EU states via Ukraine. This is a 5-year deal. It expired, marking the end of a decades-long arrangement. Now, obviously, this is Zelensky. He says that Russia cannot be allowed to prosper on the back of the oil that's being consumed. But Russia, there is another pipeline, by the way, that Russia can still send gas to Hungary, to Turkey, to Serbia through the Turk Stream pipeline across the Black Sea. Yet more bad news for the EU. The EU says, oh, we can cope, we're ready, we have contingency plans.
But there's already some shortages in certain countries. So, look, I mean, at the end of the day, this is one of those things where anyone who supports Ukraine and wants Ukraine to win this war needs to make sure that they do everything possible to stifle Russia. So this is one of the things that they can do, obviously hit them economically. They make money off of these gas imports and getting them out there. Well, brilliant, let's stop it. It has taken some time and there has been some criticism, but this is to do with international law and as we know, the interpretation of international law, because that gets fought in the courts for months and months, years and years, until someone ends up coming with a decision, and then that'll get appealed anyway. But the gas flows are actually quite sizable. It's roughly 15 billion cubic metres. I mean, I have no idea how to quantify that, but I'll try to come up with a comparison. But it's about 5% of the EU's total gas imports, so not everything, but a bit.
So in 2023, it was 10% of the EU's gas imports. It was 40% in 2021. There are some outliers here. Slovakia, not exactly happy about what is going on. You're seeing moves by the Slovakian Prime Minister also cozying up to Putin as well. The Slovakia's Prime Minister, Robert Fico, said the end of the deal would have drastic consequences for EU countries, but not on Russia. So obviously making sure that he is aligned with Russia. It's interesting. I think the EU has a number of problems that it needs to concentrate on, and we'll leave that there at the moment. This is the Sun, page 2. No under-16s ban on social media.
Yeah, so we're seeing around the world, obviously, the whole idea is that when you get onto social media, you're supposed to be of a certain age. You're supposed... And the way that you get around it is just you change what the date of birth is. It's so simple in the settings. So many
verification
people... There
needed,
is nothing.
no
there
ID.
is nothing at all. So... growing around the world has been this clampdown on trying to keep young kids off of social media, bringing in stuff like verification. And there was rumours that maybe this would be coming here in the UK, especially given the fact that you can't now tweet certain things without getting locked up in jail. But no, Labour have come out saying that they aren't planning an under-16s ban on social media. But just like with everything, let's say, we might change that in a couple of weeks' time. Who knows?
Let's just bring you some breaking news, more news from the United States now. ABC News is reporting that multiple people have been shot near a music venue in Queens in New York. This is according to local police. Other reports suggest at least 10 people have been shot at the nightclub. This is ABC News reporting multiple people have been shot near a music venue in Queens in New York, according to local police. Other reports suggest at least 10 people have been shot at the nightclub. This is a very dark day for the United States, isn't it?
I mean, 3 days, 3 attacks, you do the math. I mean, this is ridiculous. And what we've got to really make sure is that we don't jump to conclusions.
Correct.
Everything has to be fact-driven, but... this is looking really concerning. If they have, obviously, the driver driving into a group of people on New Year's Day in New Orleans, then a Cybertruck exploding outside the Trump Tower, and now, obviously, a shooting in New York. This is starting to look coordinated, and this is starting to look very, very worrying.
What would you say to Stuart? Good morning, Stuart. Stuart's message here and saying, hi, David Stewart from Bradford. These incidents in the US, similar incidents will happen here in Europe unless drastic action is taken. All the countries that hate Western values. And this underpins everything, which is that there is a section of society in many of these countries, our country, the United States, European countries, that simply do not subscribe to Western values. They are living isolated, almost existences where they don't interact with the rest of society. And I think that is what the public is saying. Enough is enough.
Yeah, and also, and what I would say in response to that is, they're already happening. We saw in Germany an attack before Christmas where a car was driven through a Christmas market. Yeah. We saw here in the UK, in London, a car driven into crowds on Christmas Day. We've now seen in the US 3 attacks, 3 incidents of people being put at the heart of an attack. This is happening now. So, as I said earlier, we talk about attacks being this far-off thing in the distance that aren't going to happen to us or happen somewhere away. Actually, this is creeping closer and closer, and it goes to really speak to the truth of what we're saying about multiculturalism, getting involved with diversity. You've got to make sure you actually adopt the country's principles, and this is a really... And I just want to say, thoughts are obviously with the victims, because they can't just be numbers. There are people at the heart of this.
Of course there are. And just on a much lighter note, New Year's resolutions, I don't know how many you have, but apparently the key to keeping your New Year's resolutions is to make sure you sleep.
Ah, well, my New Year's resolution is to fail at everything, and apparently I'll get knighthood, so who knows?
That's a very good resolution.
I learned it from Sadiq himself, so, you know.
Yeah, well, we could go down a rabbit hole with that one, couldn't we? Thank you ever so much for coming in. Really good to see you. That's Matthew Goodwin-Freeman, political commentator, taking us through this morning's papers. Still so much more to come. Also, on the basis of those terror incidents that we have been describing this morning in New Orleans, of course, the Cybertruck in Vegas, and now, of course, the shooting in Queens in New York. How are you feeling this morning? Your thoughts, please. Let me know your thoughts, your fears this morning. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can also message us on X as well, at talkTV. After the break, James Hill, political correspondent at The Spectator, will join me to talk through all the latest political news.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. Shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, Oivamo slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia. These are the missiles that Biden...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 7 o'clock on Thursday, January the 2nd. This is Morning Glory. I'm David Bull in for Mike Graham. Coming up, America under attack. Now, first of all, this morning, New Year's celebrations were rocked in New Orleans after a pickup truck was rammed into a crowd of revelers, killing at least 15 people. Then in Las Vegas, a Tesla Cybertruck burst into flames outside the Trump Hotel, killing one person. Elon Musk suggests that both incidents were acts of terrorism and potentially linked in some way. Breaking news from the United States as well. ABC News reporting multiple people have been shot at a music venue in Queens in New York. This is according to local police. Other reports suggest at least 10 people have been shot at the nightclub. That all in the United States. Meanwhile, here, Musk has also turned up the temperature on Labour's Jess Phillips, who has shut down calls from Oldham Council for a public inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. Plus, Keir Starmer introduces new laws to tackle people smuggling gangs. But the big question this morning, do they actually go far enough? So if you ban their travel, internet, mobile phone use, does that have any effect whatsoever? Get involved in the conversation. The number 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can also message us on X as well at talkTV. Well, a very good morning to you. Of course, day 2 of a brand new year, a year which was meant to be full of hope and optimism, looking forward, New Year's resolutions, and many people hoping for an end to conflict. That has been shattered on the second day of this brand new year. The Times front page: terrorist truck attacker kills 10 in New Orleans. This is the Daily Telegraph saying an IS cell is behind the New Orleans terror. The Guardian says 10 dead after truck flying IS flag drives into a crowd in New Orleans. So what do we know? Well, a terrorist with suspected links to IS drove a pickup truck into crowds of people celebrating the new year on one of America's most famous party streets. He's been named. He's Shamsud Din Bahar Jabbar. He's 42. He's a US national. He served in the US military. He sped into revelers on Bourbon Street in the heart of the French Quarter in New Orleans in the early hours, killing 15 people and injuring at least 35. Subsequently, an IS flag has been found in the rented vehicle. This is according to the FBI. Not just a flag, but also improvised explosives. Now, the FBI have actually gone further, saying he did not act alone, and they have issued a plea for more information on his contacts over the last few days. What is transpiring is the pickup truck struck a crane midway down the street where it came to a halt before Jabbar, who was dressed, according to eyewitnesses, in full military gear, got out of the vehicle. He was then killed in a shootout with police after he fired a weapon, striking 2 officers. Now, eyewitnesses were saying that actually this man was trying to kill and maim as many people as he possibly could. That has been reiterated by Police Chief Anne Kirkpatrick, who said he was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did. Meanwhile, police are also investigating a Tesla Cybertruck, which was parked outside the Trump Hotel, which also exploded. It was filled with fuel canisters and firework mortars. It exploded outside the Trump Hotel in Nevada in Las Vegas. There you can see that explosion taking place, the footage that we are just saying. Now, the link between these two, both of these vehicles were hired from a car hire app, and that is what the FBI are now concentrating on. The story, since we've been on air, has moved on. ABC News now reporting that multiple people have been shot near a music venue in Queens in New York, according to police. Other reports suggest that at least 10 people have been shot at the nightclub. And the Daily Mirror, for me, of all the front pages, the Daily Mirror, I think, has the pithiest and the most poignant headline this morning: America under attack. Joining me now, James Hill, political correspondent at The Spectator. Good morning, James. James, Happy New Year. It is not the beginning of a new year that anyone had hoped for. Here we have innocent people celebrating the new year, mowed down, people killed, injured in a barbaric attack in New Orleans. You've then got an explosion of the Tesla Cybertruck, which took place outside the Trump Hotel in Vegas, and now we have multiple people being shot in a nightclub.
Yes, and this is clearly part of a long-standing pattern, both in America and in Europe too, in which these kind of large vehicles are being used to terrorise people at a point of festivity when they're going out and socialising. We saw around Christmas the attack in the East German markets as well. There's obviously a long-standing pattern of these things being used, and so I think a couple of questions are going to be about, you know, how to what extent are these going to be copycat killings, and second of all, what is the role of kind of Islam or Islamic-linked organisations or ISIS or Islamist terrorists in this, all of these? Because it was very interesting, I think, the fact that they found the ISIS flag with him, and of course the fact that he was a US veteran as well. So really interesting questions and very tragic events today, and as you said at the top of the programme, David, not the start we would want to 2025.
No, absolutely. And just in terms of this, we know that Jabbar was born in Texas. He served, as you say, in the US military. According to his family, he had begun his conversion to Islam. Huge questions being asked also from our reporter who was actually in Vegas. This was Dan Warren, who was actually in Vegas at the time. He said the security was very lax. Certainly at one end of the strip, the security was lapsed, that vehicles were allowed to come and go. They went up to the top of a multi-storey car park. They were amazed that they had such freedom at a very busy time when obviously public safety is paramount.
Yes, I mean, this is the continual trade-off in terms of vigilance. And I think what's so striking is that if you talk to people involved in the kind of security world, is that they're constantly bombarded with information now. And that's partly a response to increased terror levels over the past 20 years or so, but also the nature of social media threats. They have to make a real hard grasp at trying to distinguish between genuine threats and sort of just general information. So clearly they judged in this case the threat level to be insufficient to raise it. Clearly, though, it could have had very different consequences if the driver wasn't so deranged to only blow themselves or set themselves up on fire.
Now, President Biden has spoken about the attack in New Orleans overnight. Let's bring you the clip. This is what Biden said as he addressed the United States nation.
The FBI is leading the investigation to determine what happened, why it happened, whether there was any continuing threat to public safety. Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby.
President Biden there. Of course, we have just, 18 days until President-elect Trump comes into power. Donald Trump has basically jumped on the bandwagon, James. He appears to blame foreign criminals. He said this is Biden's parting gift to America, migrant terrorists.
Well, I mean, as you said there, from what Biden's comments were suggesting, he's been a member of the US Army, he's been a US citizen. I'm not necessarily sure how foreign criminals can necessarily relate to that. But in terms of kind of long-standing issues on migration on the right, I think that some of the recent attacks and the attacks on President Biden's life have certainly heightened fears and some paranoia around security issues. So I think all of these things are going to be really at the presence of Donald Trump's mind when he comes into office. And yeah, as you say, at the sort of moment we're waiting to see more information come out. But it does seem as though all these issues around safety, about anything involving terror, involving foreign criminals, is very much at the forefront of American conservative thinking right now.
Absolutely. Let's just pause there and focus on matters domestic if we can. We know that immigration is the #1 issue in terms of voters' priorities. We know it's the immigration, the economy, and then the health service. And the Labour government under enormous pressure now to do something about the sheer numbers of people coming to this country. This is in the Times this morning. Anyone suspected of being involved in people smuggling or other serious crime will face bans on travel, on internet and mobile phone use under a big expansion of court orders designed to crack down on the small boat crossings. Now, essentially, what the Home Office is saying is it takes so long to actually try and prosecute people. They're trying to fast-track this, but I just wonder whether actually cracking down and saying, oh, well, you can't travel, you can't have the internet, and you can't have a mobile phone will have any bearing at all. You just get a new one.
Well, yes, and quite. And the other thing the Times piece points out is that much of these gangs are operating from France and Northern Europe outside the jurisdiction of the United Kingdom. So actually, will it even affect the people who are going to be targeted by this? I think it's one of those measures where I suppose it's difficult to sort of object in terms of principle. I don't think it would hurt the effort to sort of stop the boats, but is it going to help it much? I don't think it will particularly. And so the question is, of course, does Labour need a bigger bazooka, a bigger weapon to try and stop the boats? Because we've seen 1,700 arrive since Christmas Day alone. You've seen total numbers tick up to 25% up on 2023's numbers. So the question is, of course, whether Labour is going to be putting sufficient effort in terms of doing the big stuff that needs to be done to resolve this issue.
Well, and that's the key here. How much of this is obfuscation? Because actually what people want is action. When you look at those numbers, as you rightly say, 36,818 migrants in 2024, the second highest year since records began in 2018. Keir Starmer says, oh, we're going to smash the gangs, we're going to have a border security command. What that means, we're bringing all the agencies together, we have our intel. We talked about this story the other day about satellite tracking of boats coming across to the United Kingdom, and yet nothing is ever done.
Well, it's because Labour much prefers to talk about criminal gangs. They like having this black and white issue of these are the nasty gangs, rather than talking about the people who are coming here and the incentives that are attracting them. And so I think the challenge for Labour in 2025 is going to be, look, as there's no sign of the boat stopping anytime soon, you keep talking about how you've got rid of Rwanda and redistributed the money. Why isn't it actually having any concrete effect on bringing the numbers down?
Can I just ask the political ramifications of this? Because it seems that Labour is very soft on immigration. The Conservative Party kept saying they were going to solve immigration. They didn't do that, and of course that has left a void. That is where parties like Reform UK are doing very well. They have been very clear about what they would do, i.e. turn the boats back, and they say that is perfectly possible under UK and international law.
I mean, that's going to be the continual debate that keeps running on here. And I think, David, what's interesting is how much it's going to bleed into other routes about housing, about public service spending, about how much money is going on hotel bills, and also it's just in terms of resources involved in tying up and preventing people from moving out of the UK in terms of asylum seekers. So I think that's the question for me in this year, is going to be how much it bleeds into debates around other services, particularly when Rachel Reeves has a really interesting and difficult spending review coming up in April, May.
There's a really interesting article as well. Labour rejecting Oldham's call, this is Oldham Council's call, for a government inquiry into the grooming gangs scandal, which was broken by another news outlet. And Liz Truss has tweeted about this. She says, this is Jess Phillips, obviously, who has blocked this inquiry into the grooming gangs. And Liz Truss says this is Jess Phillips, the same Home Office minister who excused masked Islamist thugs. Her title, Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Safeguarding of Violence Against Women and Girls, is a perversion of the English language. What's your reading of this? Why is there going to be no inquiry? That is something that people are crying out for. What has been going on in Oldham? What is going on in other parts of the country? And dare we actually speak the truth about what is going on in the United Kingdom itself?
Yeah, so this was a decision that Jess Phillips made a number of months ago, which only just been picked up, which is that she rejected calls for an inquiry into what happened in Oldham. I think that in terms of the discussion around issues about grooming gangs, etc., it's one of clearly many people in Westminster would prefer not to talk about. They would
Why? Why don't they want to talk about it?
Because it's contentious issues, thorny issues, and frankly, for a minority, there'll be also those that are concerned about their voter blocks. So I think that it's a really interesting question about where this next goes. For me, it shows the power of social media and reigniting issues. Some in Westminster will point to the fact that we have had several inquiries into things like the J inquiry into Rotherham. But the question is, of course, were those willing to find sufficient number of people who are guilty? And I think that the long-standing issue for inquiries in this country is that too often they go on for years, they spend too much money, and the people get to walk away scot-free. Not least, of course, with the fact that one of the people who've become into controversy in their role in some of these scandals in one of these scandals, was Sean Telford, who's an MP now, and he's now had to lock his Twitter account, etc. I believe that one of the candidates who was selected originally by Labour for this year's general election was actually someone who's involved in the Rotherham scandal on the council service level. And that shows for me the fact that there is a lack of political ramifications if you're seen as being involved in services that have failed on all this. So I think that it shows that we haven't learnt enough lessons, but it's clearly going to be a route that's not going away anytime soon.
But the impact of this is people around the country are thinking we are not being told the truth about what is going on in Britain.
And I think there are a lot of people who are pretty shocked when they discover and actually go and read some of the reports that have been done on this. And there is a sense, perhaps, I think, of also American audiences coming to this for the first time and being amazed at what's gone on in the UK. The point is, I think a lot of people have been willing to look away from what's happened because it makes for, frankly, deeply disturbing, uncomfortable and unhappy reading.
And, of course, Elon Musk now has waded into this as well on this row over the grooming gangs. Elon Musk also tweeting, saying that Jess Phillips should be in prison.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically another sign that Labour are going to have to keep dealing with. The world's richest man, one of the world's most powerful men, is very online, and he responded to the story that she'd rejected an inquiry by suggesting she be imprisoned. Quite something, given she's a Home Office minister.
Well, it is, and also what does it say about Labour's very tricky, precarious positioning with the United States itself? President-elect Trump in power in, 18 days' time, Elon Musk right there. Elon Musk actually renting a property on Mar-a-Lago, so right next door to Trump, joined at the hip. And Labour has a huge problem here because the rhetoric has been awful, such as David Lammy, as we know, calling Trump a neo-Nazi, hating or sympathising sociopath. And that's just the beginning of it. And then, of course, Mandelson hasn't been exactly kind about Donald Trump in the past.
Yeah, I mean, Labour have a huge problem with all of this, and they're going to have people like Elon Musk who are very much aware of these issues, sort of saying all sorts of stuff, and there'll be a temptation to respond to everything that the UK government does. It's going to be a really thorny issue. I think the longer-term question, of course, as well, is about how all these scandals, etc., play an impact on the UK's reputation in America. When I was at the Republican National Convention a few months ago, it was striking how you were more likely to hear talk about Rotherham, for instance, or grooming gangs than you were to talk about the special relationship. And for me, I think all these scandals do have real-world consequences, and the chickens, frankly, are coming home to roost.
James, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time. That's James Hill, political correspondent at The Spectator. Let's take a voice note now. This is Chris. He wants to talk about the attacks in the United States. Good morning.
Good morning, David. Chris from London. Looking forward to a good show. What a terrible day. My thoughts and prayers are with all the people that have lost their lives, been injured, and the first responders in New Orleans and Las Vegas. And the only person that will be pleased about that today will be Jess Phillips, who should be on the front page of every newspaper for not going after the grooming gangs and not supporting the local council. And she'll be just pleased that she's not on the front page. Have a great show.
Thanks ever so much, Chris. Let me just bring you up to speed with these attacks in the United States. Now, authorities in the United States are now looking into a possible military connection between the suspect, this is in the New Orleans attack, and a man who died in the Tesla cyber attack explosion in Las Vegas. Law enforcement agencies are now looking into the fact that both of those men used the same car app to rent vehicles. This is Turo. This was used in both incidents. They're obviously looking at that connection. Meanwhile, since we've been on air, more breaking news. ABC News is reporting that multiple people have been shot near a music venue in Queens in New York, according to local police. Other reports suggest at least 10 people have been shot at the nightclub. Many of the papers carrying that. Of course, this is an evolving story. We will bring you more as we get it, but the Mirror rather pithily puts it in its headline this morning on the front page, America under attack. After the break, we're going to move on and talk about migration, immigration. Of course, this will be at the forefront of everyone's minds this morning. I'm going to be talking to Stephen Wolfe, Director at the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, because the Labour Party believes that anyone suspected of being involved in people smuggling or other serious crime will face bans on travel, internet and mobile phone use. But is it enough? We'll discuss that after this break.
It's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham and this, of course, is Talk. I think he was shocked. You could see the genuine shock.
I was like that.
Sees the boats coming in. Right, let's have the women and children first. He went, oh, just you lads, is it? Yeah.
He's been allowed to develop into this huge sort of problem for the BBC.
Yeah.
He'd love it, wouldn't he?
He would love it. That's why we're not doing it.
That's why we're not doing it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Good morning to you. This is Talk. This is Morning Glory. I'm David Bull in for Mike Graham. The time's 7:25. If you're waking up this morning, terrible news from the United States. A man has driven a vehicle into crowds in New Orleans, killing 10. On the back of that, there's been an explosion of a Tesla Cybertruck. This is in Vegas outside the Trump Hotel. Quite remarkable pictures that you can see there of the Tesla Cybertruck exploding, packed with explosives. Also, breaking news, ABC reporting multiple people have now been shot near a music venue in Queens in New York. According to local police, other reports suggest at least 10 people have been shot at the nightclub. Is America under attack? That's the front page of the Mirror this morning. Your thoughts also, please, on that, the implications for the United Kingdom as well. An increasingly unstable world. We've got Donald Trump coming into power in, 18 days' time. He's absolutely obsessed with the percentage of GDP which is spent by each of those countries. In Europe, of course, the United Kingdom slightly ahead of some of the other countries in Europe, but it should concentrate minds. Also, another headache for Keir Starmer. His popularity ratings already absolutely rock bottom. Immigration, top of the list of concerns of voters here in this country, and yet nothing seems to be happening. We saw those immigration figures coming in, just showing just how desperate the whole situation is. 36,818 migrants in 2024. That is the second highest year since records began in 2018. When you actually look at the sheer numbers, 150,000 illegal migrants have actually come to the United Kingdom. Just to put that into some kind of perspective, that is a town the size of Cambridge or Ipswich or Blackpool. And of course it is a very dangerous crossing, and yet nothing seems to be done. Keir Starmer scrapped Rwanda. He says he's going to set up this border control which essentially brings in all the agencies, the Border Security Command, bringing all the agencies together. They're monitoring what's going on with satellites, and yet I don't see any discernible difference in the numbers of people coming over. Actually, when you look at Christmas Day and Boxing Day alone, 858 people came on those 2 days alone in 21 dinghies. Now, the government has responded to this, and I'll talk about exactly what they're saying in just a second, but loads of you getting in contact about this. Mike in Erith, good morning to you. Happy New Year. Labour's new laws on people smuggling don't even make the sticking plaster status. People are starting to see through the charade. Sending them away is the only message these people understand. Australia did it, so can we. This is what Nigel Farage said many years ago. The only way to deal with this is to do what Australia did. You turn the boats back. Now, for those people who say that's not possible, it is absolutely eminently possible under British and international law. You turn it back. You declare a national emergency in this country. You turn the boats back, and you can do that under the 1951 UN Convention on the Seas. So it can be done. Let's talk more about the government's plans, though, because they've come up with a big new policy saying that anyone suspected of being involved in people smuggling or other serious crime will face bans on travel, internet and mobile phone use under a big expansion of court orders. They say this will crack down on small boat crossings. Now, severe curbs imposed on suspects, according to the Home Office, would vary case by case, but could include things like social media blackouts, the bans on communications with certain individuals, maybe curfews also, and restricting access to finances. This is all part of the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill. But is it enough? Will it actually do the trick? Joining me now, Stephen Wolfe, Director, Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning and Happy New Year.
Yeah, and to you. Look, the government, I think, very... Well, you and I spoke about this, 2 days ago? The government very much on the back foot here. Illegal immigration off the scale. I think the public are increasingly frustrated and angry about this. They see absolutely nothing being done about it, apart from rhetoric being talked about what the government is going to do. Clearly, the government has completely lost control of this, as the Conservative Party did as well. And now they're saying, oh, well, we're going to ban you on your travel intentions, your internet. We're going to take your mobile phone away. That's just not good enough.
No, it isn't good enough. And as you've raised, we launched our kind of research this morning, highlighting 3 key important figures about what happened with channel migrants. You're right, there's 151,136 arrived since 2018. That has led to £1 billion worth of profit to the people smugglers in that same period, just since 2018. And just for each year in total, it's cost us £15 billion just to take those people smugglers in their first year as a taxpayer. So this is a massive issue, why people are deeply concerned. And what the government is trying to do now is deal with this on a local level here with suspects of criminal action relating to people smugglers in the UK. They have what's called a special order, which they try to go through the courts, and they say that's too complex. So what we're going to do is introduce something called an interim order, which you can do without going to the courts or getting a conviction. So there are a number of things that I like about it. The idea of stopping a people smuggler as somebody involved in it, anything that you can do to try and slow that down is good, which is why they want to take away mobile phones, access to internet. But you and I know that determined people smugglers, determined criminals, when they're looking at £1 billion in profit, will find a way around that.
Absolutely right. And also, as you say, these interim orders, essentially what they're saying is these serious crime prevention orders are obtained. It's a very lengthy process. They feel their hands are being tied behind their back. This isn't just about immigration. They're saying this is about any organised criminal activity. But the elephant in the room is a lot of this organised activity and immigration doesn't happen in this country, so it won't apply.
Absolutely, and that's where the big issue comes from. We've seen drone footage that shows the start of the process of people smuggling in Afghanistan, for example, where the people smugglers get on the backs of Land Rovers and the big Toyota things where they can get people piled on, paying $50 to the Taliban police, and they're transported across to Turkey. They pay along the journey, or more than likely what happens now is they go into debt. They owe the people smugglers the money. And that route goes all the way through to the Channel. And then they come here to work in the UK illegally in the black markets or in criminality, having to pay back those people smugglers. So the mass of the gangs, the people in control, are over in foreign countries. It's only those who are connected to the repayment schemes, if you want to put it in those terms, the repayment of their loans, that could be attracted by these interim orders that the police want to use.
Yeah. Really good to talk to you. Always good to talk to you, Stephen. Thank you very much. Happy New Year. Stephen Wolfe there, Director, Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Let's take a call. Derek is in Manchester. Good morning, Derek. Good morning, Derek.
My pleasure. Happy New Year to you all.
Yeah, and to you too. Your thoughts this morning? Derek, are you there?
Scheme sounds like a joke.
Oh, there we are. Sorry, Derek, we just got hold of you. Start again.
Yeah, I'm saying the whole scheme sounds like a typical joke again. I mean, for a start, if you had a burglar break into your house, would you sort of give him a bedroom for a few days, till he got his feet on the ground? Would you pay for his dinners and all that? No, you wouldn't. You'd tow him straight back out through the door he came to after you'd got the police involved, wouldn't you?
You would?
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing, while people realise that they can come to this country and stay, even if they break in against the law to break into the country, they can still stay, and we'll pay for them to stay and all the rest of it. It's an absolute sham.
And also, you've got to remember, of course, Labour changed their own rules. They reversed the rule on the maximum stay in hotels. Rishi Sunak got it down to 28 days that you could stay there. Labour, since they've been in, have put it back up to 56 days. So hang on a minute, you and I are paying for them to have a lovely time in a hotel where they have heating, unlike elderly people in this country, and they have food, unlike many elderly people in this country. They're looked after, and we're attracting more people to come over because of the way we're treating people.
Well, the top and bottom of it is they should not be allowed to... They shouldn't even be allowed to land on the shore. They should be held in some sort of a camp if they manage to get across, which they shouldn't do in the first place. But if they do manage to get across, they should be held in some sort of a camp, and the French should be made to take them back because the French allowed them into their border, therefore insecure in our borders.
And this was the basis of RAF Scampton and Wethersfield. Of course, we don't know quite what the status of that is. Labour toying with the idea that maybe they need to have more people held in those camps. But you're right. If you hold people in somewhere like Wethersfield or Scampton and you turn the boats back and people don't have a nice time when they arrive in the United Kingdom and they are found they are here illegally, they're then deported, that sends a very strong message that other people are not welcome.
Well, going back to the burglar analogy, if you get a burglar who decides to do a row of houses, and the first one he comes to, the kick his backside and throw him out the bedroom window that he broke into, then he's not likely to want to try that one again, is he? But if you get someone that takes him in and says, "Hey, I'll make you a cup of tea, just sit down, don't worry, we won't bother with the police, just, tell me what your problems are," if they're going to be there every day, and he's going to go and tell all his mates, and all the other burglars will come and do the same thing.
Can I ask you finally?
It's an absolute joke.
Can I just finally ask?
It's not just Labour, is it? It's not just Labour.
Well, so that was my final point. Just in terms of that.
Right, it's Tony Blair we've had this. We were having the same problem under Tony Blair.
But the difference is it has now escalated to such an extent, and that was the question that I was going to ask. Do you think it has changed the outlook of British people? I get the sense we're now at an enormous turning point where people are saying, right, this is enough, we demand action, and if you do not act and if you do not get control of the borders of this country, we will vote you out.
Yeah, in 5 years' time, by the time we've absolutely flooded the country and there's no chance of voting it out because these idiots will be giving them the vote next. I mean, of course, maybe that is the plan in the first place. Because that was certainly the plan under Blair, to flood the country with as many migrants as he could, give them the vote, give them all the social security they wanted, give them the vote, and who are they going to vote for? They're not going to vote for anyone that speaks like us, are they?
Derek, really good to talk to you. Derek in Manchester there. We'll take a break. After the break, we'll bring you the latest news in America, as the Mirror says and reports this morning on its front page. America is under attack. We'll talk about what's going on in New Orleans. We'll talk also about what's going on in Las Vegas. And now, multiple people being shot near a music venue in Queens in New York. We'll bring you the very latest. LaDonna Harvey, who is iHeart Media presenter in the United States, will be joining me. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Morning Glory 7:40. Lots of you getting in touch. Martin says more terrorist attacks, and Labour's answer is if you're naughty, we'll treat you like a naughty child. No phone, no internet, and you're grounded. What's next? That's it. You're on the naughty step. That's Martin in Durham talking about the lack of action from this government. Lots of others coming in. Ben, good morning to you. Hi, David. Why don't we keep a register of people who have changed religion, specifically looking at people who convert to Islam? Keep up the good work. We were also talking about putting Royal Naval ships in the Channel, turning the boats back, which we are quite entitled to do. And we were also just wondering whether the Navy would actually agree to do that. Now, my point was that actually they have to do what the government tells them to do. Navy, Border Force, civil servants, if they refuse to deal with illegal migrants, then sack them on the spot for gross misconduct. Perhaps that will sharpen their minds. That's Andy. Keep all of those messages coming in. We're talking this morning about all of the front pages, but actually it's moved on since they reported this. The Times says terrorist truck attacker kills 10 in New Orleans. That death toll now up to 15. The Guardian, 10 dead after truck flying IS flag drives into a crowd in New Orleans. Let me bring you the latest. A terrorist with suspected links to IS drove a pickup truck into crowds in New Orleans who were celebrating at the time. He's been named his Shamsuddin Bahar Jabbar. He's 42. He's a US national. He served in the military. He drove headfirst into revelers in Bourbon Street, which is in the heart of the French Quarter in New Orleans, in the early hours, killing 15 people, 35 now injured. An IS flag was found in the rented vehicle, along, as many of the papers are reporting, along with a handgun, an automatic rifle, which was similar to a Colt AR-15. Also in a cool box in the truck were several homemade bombs. The FBI confirmed that other suspected explosive wired for remote detonation had also been found in the French Quarter. Now, also, a Cybertruck, a Tesla Cybertruck, has exploded outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. It also was filled with fuel canisters, firework mortars, and this was in Vegas. We were talking to our reporter there saying that actually it seemed to be a huge lack of security going on in Vegas, and particularly along parts of the Strip, which you would expect to have far more police presence. Dan Walker, our producer, was over in Vegas at the time, and then he spoke to us a little earlier on. Since we've been on air, though, increasing news. Authorities now looking into a possible military connection between the suspect in the New Orleans attack and the man who died in the Cybertruck explosion in Vegas. Now, as I've been reporting all morning, it now transpires that both of those vehicles were rented using an app called Turo, and that is what the law enforcement agencies are now looking into. Meanwhile, ABC News, this is ABC 7, a local news network, is reporting that multiple people have been shot near a music venue in Queens in New York, according to local police. According to other reports, at least 10 people have been shot at the nightclub. Well, let's get the very latest. LaDonna Harvey, who is iHeartMedia presenter, joins me now. A very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too, David.
It's a very dark day for America yet again. You know, as I was saying, a new year meant to be filled with optimism and hope and looking forward and resolution of conflict. You have a new president coming in just 18 days' time. And yet these attacks we've seen in New Orleans, we've seen this explosion in Vegas, and now multiple people being shot in New York. What's the latest?
Well, I mean, as you had mentioned, they are looking at the potential links between at least two of the attacks. The New York thing is too new to really have any kind of information that we have, at least on the other two attacks. But the link could be tenuous unless there is a military link between two of the attackers from Vegas and originally from Texas. He drove that truck into New Orleans for that attack. So there may be more of a link there so far. The information out of New York is still rather fresh, and we're still trying to find out more about was this a brawl that sprawled out of a nightclub and into the streets? Was it a personal grudge, or was it a part of something larger?
And of course, when there is a state of fear, which no doubt there is across America, then people draw conclusions very rapidly. And as you rightly say, there is no indication they're linked in any way at the moment. What we do know about Jabbar, he was born in Texas. He served in the U.S. military, so that is the possible link. According to his family, he had converted or started to convert to Islam. We know there was an IS flag there. I said there was a handgun, an automatic rifle as well. There's no doubt he tried to kill and maim as many people as he possibly could.
Oh, yeah.
Now that area of New Orleans is known, isn't it, for its revelry? I mean, in many ways, those people who subscribe to IS, this is the antithesis of everything they believe in. They hate the freedom that Western democracies afford.
Yes. Well, and Bourbon Street is, I mean, it's named after a liquor, and it is just a row of bars. If you've never been to Bourbon Street in New Orleans, there are music venues, bars, restaurants. It's a very lively, jumping place, no matter when you see it, whether it's during Mardi Gras or during a New Year's celebration or on an average Wednesday. So there are a lot of things that happen on Bourbon Street that probably do not align with, someone who is ultra religious, no matter which ultra religion you decide to ascribe to. His movement into Islam and radical Islam seems to have happened as he was already an adult. A lot of times you'll see that somebody is radicalized when they're younger. Your brain is more malleable, and it's much easier to get you to think a certain way or ascribe to beliefs that are, maybe the antithesis of something that you might have known when you were growing up. He also appears to have gone through a divorce, and that can be an incredibly emotional, terrible time for somebody, and could have made him ripe for some sort of conversion, not just into religion, but into a more radicalized version of the religion.
Well, we now actually have video of Jabbar. My understanding is this video was shot by himself. Extraordinarily, he was an estate agent, which you wouldn't necessarily put together with the act that he then carried out. Let's just pause and have a look at the footage that we've now received.
Good evening. I'm Shamsuddin Jabbar, property manager with Blue Meadow Properties and team lead at the Midas Group at Core Realty. I just want to say hello and let you know a little bit about me. So I'm born and raised in Beaumont, Texas, and now live in Houston. And I've been here all my life, with the exception of traveling for the military, where I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service and what it means to be responsive and take everything seriously, dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that things go off without a hitch.
Just watching that footage, he seems the least likely man to effect such an attack.
Yeah, one wonders if something very specific happened that shifted him into a mindset where he decided, it's a great idea for me to drive a truck through a very crowded venue and kill as many people as possible. Something obviously happened. I mean, the guy is American. His military service in Afghanistan, as he mentioned, was in IT and human resources. It's not like he was out there on a battlefield seeing things and doing things that might have made a mark on his soul or his vision of himself. So something happened, and I suspect it was more stateside that sent him into radical Islam and into this spiral that culminates in the deaths now, as you mentioned, of 15 people.
I mean, just in terms of that, the FBI trying to put all of these pieces together and trying to link them together, but what they are saying is it transpires. It looks like he's not acting alone, and so they're saying there are other actors out there. Actually, President Biden has spoken about the attack in New Orleans overnight. Let's just pause and see and hear what President Biden said when he addressed the nation.
The FBI is leading the investigation to determine what happened, why it happened, and whether there was any continuing threat to public safety. Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby.
President Biden there addressing the United States nation. And of course, Donald Trump has seized on this. They say don't let a crisis ever go to waste in terms of political opportunity. And he said, well, this is Biden's parting gift to migrant terrorist.
Well, he's not a migrant, so
Indeed.
we need to be really clear about that. He's an American, born and raised in Texas. So it's do the optics look great for Biden? No, but as an outgoing president, would the optics look good for any president? Of course not. You've had a terrorist attack on American soil, whether it was large scale like 9/11 or of a smaller and yet still deadly scale like we saw in New Orleans. Something happened in this man's life that set him off. And if he was in touch with other people who were like-minded, or if he was drawn into their world, the FBI is going to find that link and hopefully find those people, because nobody in the United States wants to see a continuing threat, especially a homegrown threat.
LaDonna, thanks ever so much. We'll come back to you if you get other breaking news this morning. That's LaDonna Harvey there, iHeartMedia presenter, with the latest news from the United States. Keep your messages coming in. How do you feel this morning with the idea that America is under attack? 3 incidents, one in New Orleans, one in Vegas, and also a shooting in New York as well. Mass casualties this morning. Your thoughts this morning, 0344 499 1000. It's a new year which is meant to be filled with hope and optimism, and yet we are seeing 3 incidents, very serious incidents, where people have been killed and maimed and injured. Your thoughts this morning, please. After the break, I'll be talking about also the Russian gas being stopped flowing via Ukraine. This is a 5-year deal which has come to an end. There are severe implications for some EU countries, also one in particular, and that is Slovakia. We'll talk about that after this break. Cormac Smith, former Ukrainian Foreign Minister advisor, will join me after this break. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. This is Morning Glory. Let's move on. Russian gas has stopped flowing to EU states via Ukraine. This is a 5-year deal. It's expired, actually, marking the end of a decades-long arrangement. Zelensky said his country would not allow Russia to earn additional billions on our blood. Poland's government, meanwhile, said the cut-off was another victory against Moscow. Now, the European Commission said the EU has prepared for the change and most states could cope. However, Moldova, that is not in the EU, that is already suffering shortages. There is also another pipeline, which is called the Turk Stream pipeline, and Russia can send gas to Hungary, to Turkey and Serbia across the Black Sea via that. But how significant is this? Cormac Smith, former Ukraine Foreign Minister advisor, joins me now. Cormac, always good to talk to you. Your thoughts on this, because it is significant, the end of the deal, gas not flowing through. The EU says it's prepared, is it?
David, good morning. The EU has been making preparations and announced at the end of December its determination to replace Russian gas supplies. But look, this is very significant. Ukraine is fighting for its life, obviously. And I've been saying for 3 years that one of the things we needed to do, apart from arming Ukraine to the teeth, was sanction Russia back to the Stone Age. And that hasn't been done. To give you an example, Russia earned an estimated $250 billion during 2024 for the export of its oil and gas. Now, to put that in context, there's something called purchasing power parity. That'll buy about 3 times as much on the domestic market in Russia as that would, say, in the UK or the United States. And of course, most of Russia's industrial defense base is domestic. And of course, they have supplies from other countries in their alliance, like China, Iran, and North Korea as well. So I think this is very, very significant, and absolutely, as the polls have said, a victory for Ukraine.
And of course, Slovakia is an outlier in many ways, isn't it? Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico sort of cozying up to Russia and to Putin.
Along with Viktor Orban in Hungary, yes. And one of the things that this will test, I think, is the resolve of the European Union and other European countries, including Great Britain, to stand behind Ukraine and to minimize the effects of this on any Eastern European countries. It's estimated, I think, that other Eastern European countries are responsible for about $5 billion in oil and gas sales during 2024. So that's the equivalent in our terms of about $15 billion going into Russia's war machine. And we've got to remember that oil and gas probably accounts for as much as 50% of Russia's government budget. Of which over a third is dedicated to the war effort. So this is very, very significant. This is cutting off vital billions of dollars that Putin is using to murder Ukrainians.
Cormac, always good to talk to you. Cormac Smith, former Ukraine Foreign Minister advisor. After the break, we'll talk more about the terrorist incidents in the States.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. A shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer.
but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia. These are the missiles that Biden has...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. It's just after 8 o'clock on Thursday, January the 2nd. I'm David Bull, in for Mike Graham. This is Morning Glory. Good morning. Coming up, America is under attack. Now, first of all, New Year's celebrations were rocked in New Orleans after a pickup truck was rammed into a crowd of revelers, killing at least 15 people. Then, in Las Vegas, a Tesla Cybertruck burst into flames outside the Trump Hotel, killing one person. Elon Musk suggests that both incidents were acts of terrorism and potentially linked in some way. Since we've been on air, ABC News now reporting that multiple people have been shot near a music venue in Queens in New York. This is according to local police. Other reports suggest at least 10 people have been shot at the nightclub. In matters closer to home, Musk also has turned up the temperature on Labour's Jess Phillips. Now, Jess Phillips has shut down calls from Oldham Council for a public inquiry into the Grooming gang scandal. Also, Keir Starmer introduces new laws to tackle people smuggling gangs. The big question this morning, do they actually go far enough? So apparently criminals could face bans on travel on internet and mobile phone use. Is that really all you can do? Is that enough? Let me know. Get involved in the conversation. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can also message us on X at talkTV. Well, a very good morning to you. The papers are out of date already because this is a very fast-moving story indeed, but the front page of the Times says terrorist truck attacker kills 10 in New Orleans. That is now 15 people are dead as a result of that incident. Again, The Guardian says 10 dead after truck flying IS flag drives into crowd in New Orleans. What do we know? If you are just waking up, a terrorist with suspected links to IS drove a pickup truck into crowds of people celebrating the new year on one of America's most famous party streets. He has now been named. His name is Shamsuddin Bahar Jabbar. He's 42. He's a US national. He served in the US military. He sped into revelers on Bourbon Street in the heart of the French Quarter in New Orleans in the early hours, killing 15 people, injuring another 35. Now, what they have found, according to multiple sources, is they found an IS flag, they found a handgun, they found an automatic rifle, which is similar to a Colt AR-15. In the cool box in the truck were several homemade bombs as well. Now, the FBI says they do not believe that he acted alone. In terms of what unfolded, the pickup truck struck a crane midway down the street where it came to a halt. Jabbar gets out of the vehicle dressed in full military gear. He was then killed in a shootout with police after he fired a weapon, striking 2 officers. The police chief, Anne Kirkpatrick, said this man was trying to run over as many people as he could. He was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did. Meanwhile, moving over to Las Vegas, police are now investigating after a Tesla Cybertruck, which was parked outside the Trump Hotel in Vegas, exploded. It was packed full of fuel canisters and firework mortars. These are huge explosives, and as you can see there, that is an enormous explosion outside the Trump Hotel in Vegas. The driver was killed. 7 people were injured as well, police said, without naming of any of the individuals involved. These 2 are thought to be linked. The reason, both of these rental cars, both rented using an app called Turo, and that is the lead the FBI are following up on. And of course, now we are reporting that multiple people have been shot near a venue in Queens in New York. Other reports suggest that at least 10 people have been shot in this nightclub. Let's go back to Vegas, because Dan Warren, who works here at Talk, who is a Talk producer, was actually in Vegas at the time of the explosion. I spoke to him earlier, and this is what he said.
We actually went to a multi-storey car park next to the Trump Hotel to watch the fireworks and thought security are clearly going to move us on here because it's, you know, this could be a risk, and security didn't care. In fact, at one point it looked like a scene from Fast and Furious of all these cars pulling up at the top of this multi-storey car park. And I was saying at the time, this really doesn't seem that secure. You know, God forbid something happen. Obviously, I woke up to the news of the horrific event in New Orleans, and then as we were driving and leaving Vegas this morning, we passed the Trump International Hotel and saw a Tesla Cybertruck. I don't know if it was the one that it exploded, and a member of the group that was with me had never seen one before and was, what the heck is that? So we're talking about it, and about just before we got to the state line with California, we saw another one that had been pulled over by the police, and then 20 minutes later suddenly all the news flashes came that one had exploded out of the Trump outside the Trump Hotel. We do understand that the driver came from Colorado, arrived in the Strip around about 7:30 local time this morning, or New Year's Day morning, and spent an hour cruising up and down the Strip before parking up outside the hotel, and about 15 seconds later the vehicle exploded.
So that's Dan Warren there, who works for Talk as a producer, was in Vegas at the time of the explosion of that Cybertruck. Also, we now have footage of this man, of Shamsuddin Jabbar. He was actually an estate agent, and he produced a video where he speaks directly to camera. He comes across as a very unassuming man. He is an American, born and bred in America. And this is the clip that he posted online.
Good evening. I'm Shamsuddin Jabbar, property manager with Blue Metal Properties and team lead at the Midas Group at Core Realty. I just want to say hello and let you know a little bit about me. So I'm born and raised in Beaumont, Texas, and now live in Houston. And I've been here all my life, with the exception of traveling for the military, where I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service and what it means to be responsive and take everything seriously, dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that things go off without a hitch.
Well, joining me now is Peter Hitchens, who's a columnist at the Mail on Sunday. Very good morning to you, Peter.
Good morning, David.
Your thoughts this morning, these separate incidents which seem to be linked by this car app where you can hire a car, 2 very distinct incidents, one in New Orleans, of course, we now know 15 dead there, but also the explosion of the Cybertruck. It's too early to say whether the shooting in New York is related to this, but I think the Mirror has the right headline: America under attack. This is a new year, a time of optimism, of hope, of resolution, where people are hoping the world becomes a safer place, which doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, my response to all these events is to wait and to discover much more about them than we could possibly know at this stage. To rule nothing out. Of course, it is perfectly possible the events are linked and that there is some terrorist element, but it's also possible that they're not, and that there might be some other reason involved. I am very reluctant to get involved in any speculation about what this is about until we know a great deal more about the perpetrators and about the background, and I would advise other people to do the same thing. Beyond that, obviously, these events are absolutely horrifying for those involved in them. The descriptions that one hears of the people screaming in the street in New Orleans are freeze the marrow, and the idea that anyone could behave like this is horrifying. But on the other hand, the point that one must make is that incidents of this kind, sometimes involving guns, sometimes involving the use of motor vehicles, have been on the increase throughout the advanced world really since the 1960s. Some of them are more reported than others because they catch the eye more. I think most people are possibly unaware that in November, in a large city in China, 35 people were killed by somebody who went crazy with a motor vehicle. We know almost nothing about the nature of that. So, as I say, I would just urge people to reserve judgment on what the cause is until we know a great deal more, because I think that's almost always wise. If you don't take care to find out what the real cause is, then you won't be able to take effective action to prevent it from happening in future, which I think must be our main objective when we see these things happen.
I mean, it is extraordinary when you see that video of Jabbar. He seems the least likely person to drive a vehicle into a crowd trying to kill and maim as many people as possible. He was born in Texas, served in the US military.
Yeah, in Beaumont, yeah, a place I've been to. I don't, it is very puzzling. He doesn't look or sound like such a person, and one has to ask what will have happened to him between the two events. But again, as I say, there's an awful lot of investigation to be done here, and there are an awful lot of people to do it if they want to do it. And I would very much recommend that, while giving all our sympathy to the bereaved, and indeed all our sympathy to the United States in the general loss, we don't rush to any kind of judgment, because rushing to judgment will often get you the wrong answer.
And of course, we've heard from President Biden, of course, President Trump, or elect Trump, who takes office in just 18 days' time, has issued a statement saying, this is Biden's parting gift to America, migrant terrorists. Well, of course, he's not a migrant. He was born and raised in the US.
I think there was some speculation early on that the perpetrator, or the vehicle at least, had come across the border, which has now turned out to be completely untrue. And this is an example of how you can get things wrong in the early hours of these events. I suspect that Mr. Trump regrets saying that now, so let's hope so. But again, it's an example of how you can get it wrong if you rush to judgment. So don't do that.
So can we just focus on matters domestic? Of course, immigration is the #1 priority for the electorate. We know that. Immigration, economy, the NHS, in that order. And now we've heard from the Labour government, as you know, which has failed to get on top of the immigration crisis. And they have said that anyone suspected of being involved in people smuggling or other serious crime will face bans on travel, the internet and the mobile phone. They say this is a huge expansion of court orders. It will crack down on the small boat crossings. Do you buy that?
Well, it gives the illusion of action, and of course it comes from a Prime Minister whose main background is in prosecuting, whose response to almost any problem in the country is to prosecute it. And these are perfectly reasonable things to do to people if you've convicted them of people smuggling, and I'm not against them, but the idea that they're going to prevent it is, it seems to me to be a stretch. And nobody has really worked out a way to prevent it, because the international legal system under which we must all operate, and under which major democratic countries are forced to operate, makes it very, very difficult to take effective action against illegal mass migration of this kind. And until the major countries of the world set about dealing with that, then it will remain so. And half the problem is that what I've called for many, many years, the liberal elite in the Western countries has been against taking such action, and so has left discussion on this to quite a small zone of politics, which it then dismisses as far right. To me, the most interesting development of the past year has been in Germany, and the rise, not as fast as perhaps it should have been, but certainly interesting, of a politician called Sarah Wagenknecht, who is of the left, and who has turned to all her friends on the left and said, you must stop saying that everybody who's against immigration in Germany is a Nazi. They're not against immigration because they're Nazis. They're against immigration because they're cheesed off. And we must treat their concerns seriously. And until people such as Sir Keir Starmer on the left in this country and his equivalents all across Europe understand that it is because they're cheesed off that people are against this, and it's perfectly reasonable to defend your own borders. And indeed, it's a good, actually, a perfectly good liberal policy if you think about it. Until they all get together to change the ridiculous refugee laws and the ridiculous international laws which prevent firm action being taken against us, nothing will happen. And so, when you see these measures that we were mentioning earlier on, they are, as I say, there's nothing wrong with them in themselves, but they won't change anything. It really is necessary for people such as Sir Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper to reevaluate their entire attitude towards mass migration. It's not a wholly right-wing concern. It should be the concern of the left.
When you look at the numbers, 36,818 migrants in 2024, the second highest year since records began in 2018, more than 150,000 illegal migrants coming to this country. That is a town the size of, say, Cambridge or Ipswich or Blackpool. People, as you rightly say, have had enough of this. They want the government to take action. They saw no action under the Conservatives, but in some ways, at least there was a deterrent on the table with the Rwanda scheme. Now, Starmer comes in, he gets rid of that. He says, right, we're going to have a big border security command, but I'm going to bring all the agencies together. No one sees any evidence that that has done any good whatsoever. Do you honestly think, and do you have faith, that Labour will get on top of this immigration crisis and actually secure British borders?
Well, no, I don't, and I think this is one of the problems of modern politics, that the parties of the left are so obdurate about this. The cancellation of the Rwanda scheme was a grave mistake. I'm not sure. I was very sceptical about the Rwanda scheme when it was first put forward, but there was clear evidence, particularly among migrants in Ireland, and their decision to stay away from Britain. There was clear evidence that it was beginning to have the intended effect of making people wonder whether it was worthwhile coming here. And I think it was a stupid mistake to cancel it until it had been given a chance to either work or not work. And I just thought that was petty and typical of an incoming government which doesn't really have any new ideas and is, in fact, in the group of people of the Euro-communist left and has been for many years. If the left will not take this on, then the left will ultimately be responsible for the political consequences, which are already visibly developing across the whole of Europe and will continue to develop in this country. I don't think that's intelligent of them, and it seems to me it's worth arguing very clearly. I come obviously from the socially, morally and politically conservative right, but I think that unless and until we can persuade the leaders of the political left, the leaders of the media left, to understand that this isn't just a problem for fascists and Nazis and bigots. Absolutely not. That it's perfectly reasonable for ordinary people to be distressed about the complete loss of control of national borders. The figures you mentioned, the numbers of people coming into this country legally and illegally, which the lobby Migration Watch have been pointing out for decades now and saying this is going to cause immense stress on the country. These are extraordinary. And they're probably the biggest issue which has come before this country in decades. And nobody will talk about it in any way suggesting that it will ever come to an end. So, yeah, I think we are at a very serious stage. If the dominant political parties and forces in our country, and its politics, its legal system, its education system, and its media, won't wake up to this, then I'm afraid they are storing up the grapes of wrath.
Peter, always good to talk to you. Happy New Year to you. Peter Hitchens, their columnist at The Mail on a Sunday. Lots of messages coming in. David, this is Kevin. It's sickening to hear of these attacks in the United States, but this is why the country fears who we are letting into the country, now fully unvetted, and will become a danger on our streets. That's Kevin in Southampton. Lots of you commenting on what is going on, saying it's absolutely sickening. This is interesting. Michelle says, hi, David. Where are the moderate Muslims condemning these acts of violence? We don't see them protesting or calling out this evil, do we? Genuine question, though. Thanks very much, Michelle, for that. Gordon, good morning to you. Good morning, David. You will never stop terrorism. When we have a group of people who put their religion before anything else, add to that the grooming gang scandal, what is the solution? It is a tough one. And of course, if you are waking up this morning, Elon Musk has actually turned up the temperature on this explosive row over the grooming gangs. Jess Phillips had shut down calls for a public inquiry into the scandal. And Elon Musk essentially says that she deserves to be in prison for shutting down a public inquiry into what is going on. I think there is a real sense in this country that people say they're not being told the truth about what is going on in many aspects and facets of public life in this country. Your thoughts, please. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. After the break, we'll talk about British national security. Lots of stories here about Russian warships being tracked for 5 days off the coast of the United Kingdom. Also, the Chagos Islands deal. This is the deal that Keir Starmer is desperate to push across the line before Biden leaves in 18 days' time. Trump very unhappy about the Chagos Islands deal. And now a top ex-diplomat has told Starmer, you must reject the £800 million claim from Mauritius. That's how much they want to be paid every single year for this deal. It's a ridiculous amount of money, and that is why this ex-diplomat tells Starmer you need to bin the deal. We'll talk more about that after this break. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
It's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham and this, of course, is Talk. I think he was shocked. You could see the genuine shock.
I was like that.
Sees the boats coming in. Right, let's have the women and children first. He went, oh, just you lads, is it?
Yeah. He's been allowed to develop into this huge sort of problem for the BBC.
Yeah.
He'd love it, wouldn't he?
He would love it. That's why we're not doing it.
That's why we're not doing it.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk. This is Morning Glory, 8:25, Thursday, January 2nd. Lots of messages coming in about immigration, as you would expect. Rick in Manchester, why don't we just fine France £1,000 for every person that crosses the channel illegally in boats and then charge them interest on the balance when they inevitably don't pay them on time? That might force them into some sort of action. Also, we were talking this morning about the government's great new idea, which is to stop those people who come here illegally by taking away their mobile phone, restricting internet access. Happy New Year, David. So Starmer is going to restrict access to the internet and mobile phones for those suspected of people smuggling. Our prisons are already full of illegal mobile phones, so how on earth is this latest proposal going to work for those not in prison? It's another joke from a desperate and failing government. Just turn back the boats. Keep all your messages coming in. Also, we will keep an eye on what is going on in the United States. Of course, all the front pages are full. The latest from the United States authorities are looking into the possible military connection between the suspect in the New Orleans attack and a man who died in the Tesla Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. Law enforcement are already looking into the fact that both men used the same app to rent a vehicle. That is called Turo. That was used in both of those incidents. Now, in a separate incident, and we don't know if this is related in any way, ABC News is reporting that multiple people have been shot near a music venue in Queens in New York. This is according to local police. Other reports now suggesting at least 10 people have been shot at the nightclub. Now, let's move on and talk about an increasingly unstable world. One of the pivotal moments and policies that is linked to this is the Chagos Islands deal, which Starmer is desperate to push across the line before Biden steps down as US president. Donald Trump is known to be against this deal. And now a former Foreign Office official has urged Keir Starmer to reject demands from Mauritius for more money in talks over the Chagos Islands. This is Simon MacDonald, Lord MacDonald. He's advised foreign ministers for 5 years under the Tories, warned the government do not hand over what has been called crazy money to get a deal done before Trump gets into power into Washington. So essentially, the background to this is that as part of this deal, Mauritius said the deal wasn't good enough. So Mauritius says, right, we want 800 million quid a year, and on top of that, we want billions of pounds of reparation money to secure this US-UK airbase in Diego Garcia. So that is a huge amount of money. Lord MacDonald urging them to say no. They say that actually Mauritius is overplaying its hand. Well, joining me now is Vanessa Kalu, who's the Chagosian lead, Friends of the British Overseas Territories. A very good morning to you.
Good morning and Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
That is a fantastic flag behind you, and I can't help noticing that. Could you, I mean, I think a lot of people, we talk about the Chagos Islands a great deal. It's an archipelago. It's strategically very important. It has a very complex history, doesn't it, for Chagosians? And this is because there is a huge military base there, which is in Diego Garcia. But the history of this is complicated. And obviously the United Kingdom expelled the Chagosians. This was basically between 1967 and 1973 to allow the United States to build naval support facility Diego Garcia. Do you just want to put this into context about why historically this is so important and the position that you come from?
Yes. The history is before 1965, they started to remove Chagosian, the indigenous Chagosian, from Diego Garcia to Mauritius. This is a strategy that's been with the Mauritian government that is still the surname that is going like parent to parent. So in 1960, I would say, and then move over until Mauritius gets his independence, that the Sagosian being forcibly removed from their island. And Sagosian is a British colony, and they still British colony. We have a British overseas territory citizen and British citizen. So now the situation is Chagos Island never belonged to Mauritius. This is frustrated that the Prime Minister, the UK Prime Minister, is still consider the demand of Mauritius. And as we know, the KPMG resettlement study conducted under David Cameron cost taxpayer $1 billion, with over 3,000 Filipinos and Mauritius workers already housed on Diego Garcia. Prioritizing the relocation of Sagosian could save UK taxpayer money and unnecessary expense. So I don't understand why the UK Prime Minister is still persisting that Mauritius have a claim. It was an advisory opinion on ICJ. Chagos Island never belonged to Mauritius.
And that is the most extraordinary thing, that Starmer is so keen to get this urgently saying to Mauritius, you can take control of the Chagos Islands. As you say, they never belonged to Mauritius in the first place. You are proudly an overseas territory of the United Kingdom. In terms of the policy that's been enacted, has anyone actually asked any Chagosians what they want?
No, we never been consulted. All the meeting we had with the MPs or Foreign Office is always about UK support, that we still is struggling to get support here in the UK. In Mauritius, it's disaster. There's no support for Sagosian in Mauritius. A lot of people is relocating to UK, and we as individuals, we are helping to settle Sagosian as British in the UK without local government help. So the situation is everything happening at the moment with immigration. You have a lot of British citizens and British overseas territory coming to UK with no help. That is sad to see immigration coming in. People who don't have British citizen get better treatment than their own British citizen. Many Sagosian want to settle in the UK and Diego Garcia, and as British citizen, as Sagosian, we should establish a Sagosian council or government to address our claim, to stop the claim from Mauritius or another country like Maldives, just like other British overseas territory. Sadly, in the meantime, Sagosian is struggling in Mauritius and everywhere around the world.
So are you hopeful with Donald Trump coming in as US president? He is deeply against this deal, and also the Chagos Islands is strategically very important for world peace, for the US-UK base that is there on Diego Garcia. But as you say, ultimately this comes down to your homeland and making sure that you are looked after. Are you optimistic that once Trump comes in, and if he does stop this deal, you will be treated fairly?
I hope for that, and I'm definitely know that Trump will do the best what he can do to resettle Sagosian, to work with Sagosian in Diego Garcia, as we are keen to start our skill and working together with the military base. We want to return back home. And we've been born under this flag. All the descendants being born under this flag is a British Indian Ocean Territory flag, and we are proud to be a UK citizen and proud to be a British Overseas Territory citizenship. This is our identity.
And it is a wonderful flag, a wonderful identity. If you had 1 minute with Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, what exactly would you say to him?
I would say to him, as a British citizen, I would like to return home, and you, as a UK government, do your job.
Very nice to talk to you, Vanessa. I wish you a great deal of success. That's Vanessa Kalu there, Chagosian lead, Friends of the British Overseas territories. A really complex discussion there about the Chagos archipelago, of course, and Keir Starmer desperate to get this deal across the line before Biden disappears. Trump against it. Many politicians in this country also saying this is a terrible deal, and Mauritius overplaying its hand, saying it wants 800 million quid every single year, plus billions in reparations as well. And then you hear from Chagosians themselves who say they are proudly part of the British overseas territories. It seems that this will continue to run, and I think Trump will get into power, and my personal view is I think he will put a stop to that. Keep all your messages coming in, please. We are keeping an eye on what is going on in the United States. Many of you getting in contact. This is Zoe in Lancashire. Good morning, David. Good morning to you. Starmer can tell us anything he wants. He thinks we're stupid. This man will not do anything. These boats keep coming, except we'll hear less and less of them arriving as Starmer will try and stop reporting coverage. We were also talking about removing the mobiles from people coming here illegally. Good morning, says Michael. Taking away a mobile. They own the phone shops. They own the barbers, the vape store and the streets. The UK is finished. This is heartbreaking. Bill in Cheshire, good morning to you. Labour's policy and approach to illegal immigration and small boat crossings is about as much use as a chocolate fireguard. It is absolutely pathetic. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. Send a voice note as well, 0344 499 1000. After the break, we're going to be talking about working from home. Now, research shows that staff who don't work from home are more likely to be promoted, according to a new survey. Are you surprised? I'll be talking to Molly Johnson-Jones, who's CEO and co-founder of Flexa Careers. That is after this break. This is Morning Glory. A very good morning to you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
This is Talk. We were just talking about the Chagos Islands. Good morning, Dr. David. This is Christine in the Isle of Wight. Good morning, Dr. David. Re the Chagos Islands. Do we know why Keir Starmer wants to do this? I don't understand. I think many people share your sentiment. Why does he want to do this and expedite what is an absolutely bonkers deal? Billions in reparations and 800 million quid a year just for the privilege of leasing the island, which is a British overseas territory currently. Keep all of your messages coming in, please. Let's talk about people working from home, shall we? Because according to this study, employees who work from home are less likely to be promoted. This is according to the bosses and their admissions. If you go into the office, you are more likely to get a pay rise. You're more likely to progress through the business. Now, this is a survey done on 251 employers by Reed Group, and essentially it comes out with that conclusion that if you work in the office, you're going to progress better, you'll get paid more, and your future and your prospects will be brighter. Joining me now is Molly Johnson-Jones, who's CEO and co-founder of Flexet Careers. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Are you surprised by this?
I am, actually. I think that stat is really quite shocking.
Is it?
But
Why?
I would actually. It is shocking. I think we need to, first of all, clarify what we really mean by working from home. Because I think there tends to be a conflation of working from home meaning fully remote all of the time. And I think the danger with titles like this of saying people that go into the office are more likely to be promoted is that we suggest that that is in fact people that go into the office every single day. Whereas actually there are tens of thousands of companies out there making hybrid working work as well as remote working work as well.
Yeah, no, I get that. But also we have seen in the civil service that they're all sitting at home doing absolutely diddly squat, being paid money by the state. I want them in the office. I'm paying for them.
Has that really changed from when they were in the office all the time?
Well, that is a moot point. But the fact is, Jacob Rees-Mogg, I think he had a very good point, didn't he? He went round sticking sticky notes on people's desks saying, "Are we going to see you soon?"
Why is that a good point, though? Is that not measuring presenteeism rather than measuring...
Well, in my humble experience, when you work in an office, your productivity is higher because you talk to your colleagues, you have inspirational talks and ideas. I think there is a temptation that work revolves when you're at home. Work revolves around putting the laundry in or feeding the children. I understand it can be productive, but it is also dependent on your own mindset, isn't it? And your own work ethic.
Absolutely. But I'm afraid I think that the people that tend to avoid work when they're working from home are also the people that avoid work in the office. And I'd like to clarify one point there that you said around productivity being higher when people are in the office, because I'm afraid that that's actually just not true. So
who says?
Although this study was done on 251 employers, which is a pretty decent sample size and definitely gives representative results, a study by Nick Bloom, who's a Stanford professor, is it is the largest study, in fact, on the impact of remote work and working from home on productivity. And what his study shows is that actually remote work and working from home are highly complementary. So if we look at hybrid working, for example, which has a definition of anything from a few days a month going into the office versus, up to 3 to 4 days a week in the office. And when he looked at that impact in terms of productivity, it was completely flat. It was identical to people going into the office 5 days a week. But the positive upsides are obviously on ability to attract top talent, diversity, engagement, happiness, loyalty, and retention. So when we say productivity when you are in the office is higher, that's actually totally untrue. It's the same.
So what about team working? Because I have a small business. I've worked in media for a very long time. I work in medical companies and so on. If you're doing Zoom meetings the whole time, the connection is not the same as being there in person.
I totally agree with you, and that's why I think we come back to the point of remote working and in-person working being highly complementary. We need both of them. And in fact, you very rarely see fully remote companies have no in-person time at all. So I think this is when I say about it being a very binary discussion right now, if it's either about going into the office every day or it's about being fully remote. Actually, the majority of companies exist and the majority of individuals' wants and desires exist in that grey area in the middle.
And what do you think is the perfect mix then? If we agree that actually having some time in the office is a good idea and then some remote working so that you have flexibility around childcare or whatever it is, so the house is quiet and you can work late at night and you can concentrate or whatever. What is the ideal split, do you think?
I'm going to give you an answer you probably don't want, which is it really depends on the company. It genuinely does depend on the company. There are some companies where their cultures are much more in person. It might be that there's a lot more learning and an early point in the job. Maybe you're doing graduate schemes. Obviously, learning and by osmosis is much, much harder when you're fully remote. So for those companies, they would need more in-person time. Whereas I run a company that employs dozens of people and we come in together once a month. But that once a month is incredibly important for us to form those social bonds to help people work together. And there are other companies that will do a week-long offsite once a quarter. It is about being open-minded here, about being aware of the fact that this is ultimately the future of work. Like, the work is no longer just going into the office 5 days a week, and it hasn't been for a very long time. We've just been forced into the majority of companies now having to look at this rather than that being a slow progression.
So can I just ask you, why are many companies now reverting and saying to home workers, come back in?
Yeah, it's a really valuable question. And I think we need to look deeper at that. If a company can say, hey, our productivity really has dropped and it's because of working from home, rather than the fact that we are in a macroeconomic downturn, or rather than the fact that perhaps their ways of working aren't adapting with being able to retain top talent and they're losing their top employees. If they can point to, hey, we've really, really suffered and we need to bring people back, fair enough. Companies absolutely have the right to do that. But I think we also need to be aware that there are other reasons for companies doing this. That could be a loyalty test, for example, like Elon Musk at X.
Yes.
It could be, as we've seen with a lot of companies, a masked redundancy drive where they want people to leave. And it's cheaper just to demand people back into the office to get rid of a large number of people. And we also need to look at ulterior motives. Like, there are many CEOs who have made their careers in person, and they believe that that is how it should be done, and it is their own belief that that is better. And I think what we need to stop doing is saying, hey, productivity is lower, people are going to stop getting...
But if it's a private company and the boss thinks they want their staff in the office, then surely the staff need to be in the office.
And it's totally their right to do that, but they need to be aware of the consequences. And I think there's a lot of...
What consequences?
Of people leaving. Their best people will leave.
But then there'll be other people.
Yes, but the best people will demand flexibility.
I'm not sure that's true, to be honest. I think that isn't it very difficult to evaluate performance at home if you're sitting there in your underwear doing a Zoom call?
But I think that's a very specific view of how people work from home. The majority of people don't do that. It's impossible to evaluate performance if people are working from home if your performance measurement is based on presenteeism and sitting in an office and tapping your swipe card in. If you're focusing on proper performance metrics, hitting KPIs, hitting targets, it is exactly the same. And if anything, I would say that we are forcing companies by the future of work evolving to actually measure performance in a reliable and measurable way, rather than just doing the old school relationship building. Hey, I saw that person, that means they're working.
What happens to teamwork? Because in the companies I've worked in, working closely with them, you socialise with them, you go to the pub with them, you have better interpersonal relationships, you understand each other, and also I go back to the creative side of this. You tend to bounce ideas off each other far more when you're together.
Yeah, I totally agree, which is why that balance is needed. But I think also companies, when they are intentional about how they run their companies, about how they bring people together, can foster brilliant collaboration, brainstorming, innovation online. We have so many tools in front of us that the type of invention that is happening in this space is happening at such a fast rate because there's so much demand for it. We've got companies distributed all over the world. They will drive that change. So it's embracing the fact that you will get more out of people if we balance remote and in person together and focus on the grey area rather than having big arguments about whether you're fully remote team or in-office team.
And just finally, if I may, Labour is very keen to push ahead with a 4-day week. Would you think that's a good idea?
I think it's a very interesting test to do, and I think it is very much worth trialling because a lot of the other companies that have done it have seen really, really interesting results. And I think the only way to disprove people's opinions on these kind of things is to do proper, measurable, reliable studies.
Molly, really good to talk to you. Thanks for your time. Molly Johnson-Jones, their CEO and co-founder of Flexa Careers. Let me know your thoughts on that. Loads of you are getting in touch about that. David, the lady claims surprise that people who go to work are valued and paid more. It's obvious it's more likely the boss will have met them and worked alongside someone in the office. Maybe I'm a dinosaur. Good morning, David. Why is it a surprise that people who do not work from home get promoted more than people who do work from home? The reasons are so obvious it doesn't need explaining. Happy New Year. That's Mike. Happy New Year to you as well. David, this government is a prime example of why civil servants should stay out of government leadership. They work in an environment when anything they do wrong never has consequences. That's Jay in Stockport. Lots of other messages coming in about the Chagos Islands, also about the right to work at home. Keep all of those coming in, please. Also, based on the news coming out of the United States, let me know your thoughts on that and how you feel this morning. Sue is in Leicestershire. Good morning, Sue.
Morning, David.
What's on your mind this morning?
Well, I just wanted to say about the government's new information about immigrants.
Yes, so this is about the people smuggling, and they're going to put them in the naughty corner and take away your internet and your phone.
That's right. Well, it's not going to work because all they have to do is go to the local library and churches and voluntary agencies. They can get access to computers there.
And so when they unveil their border security, asylum and immigration bill, which we will expect to see shortly, are you confident that Keir Starmer can get on top of the people smuggling gangs, that illegal immigration into this country will stop?
No, not at all. I just would like to see another general election. I just think, this started when Tony Blair was in power. I think it's done enormous damage to this country, and it's got nothing to do with race. It's to do with culture, it's to do with finances, the structure of the country, resources, GPs, schools and so on. The country is at breakdown. We're on the verge of collapse, I think. If it
Can I just ask you, finally, is this an inflection point? I get the sense that actually people have had enough. And I think before now, people would sit on those thoughts and not really espouse those views. But I get the sense that people are really angry.
I think they are really angry. I'm really angry, but we've held on to them because of being called racist. It's got nothing to do with that. The volume of people is not sustainable.
Sue, really good to talk to you. Thanks very much. Happy New Year to you. That's Sue in Leicestershire. Let's take a break. After the break, I'm going to be talking to Peter Kirkham, who's a former Detective Chief Inspector in the Met Police. He wants to talk about the Shoplifters Charter. Apparently, we've got record business robberies. That's an article in the Times. We'll talk about that after this break. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
Saturday night, and you lucky people have got four of Talk's mightiest personalities in one room. I mean, what could go right? Me, Jeremy Kyle, Michael Graham, Julia, I'm Not Grumpy Tonight, Hartley Brewer and Kev O'Sullivan. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
What are you thinking? Jules is smiling.
I think they've made us all look a lot better than we actually look.
I know what to ask for next time I go to the hairdresser.
I'd like to talk about Jez's nipples on his...
You got nipples? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
he's got nipples.
I didn't think you had nipples. I assumed you just came in an egg.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Lots of messages. It just shows how incompetent two-tier Keir is when he thinks that travel, internet and mobile phone bans on smuggling gangs will stop them from importing more and more invaders to the UK. In capital letters, clueless. Keep all of those messages coming in, please. We'll talk now about robberies. Robberies targeting businesses reached a record high last year with 33 every day, according to new figures. These are Office for National Statistics, or ONS data, showing that robbery of a business property rose by 52% in the year to June 2024. So it basically has gone from 7,884 to 12,000. That is the highest ever reported. Also, there's another investigation by UDSOR, which is the shop workers union. I think that's, anyway, USDOR actually, also revealed 1 in 5 retail staff members had been the victim of a violent assault last year. Not even 1 in 10 robberies ends with an assailant. 50% of business robbery investigations were concluded without police forces able to determine a suspect. It's a free-for-all. Joining me now, Peter Kirkham, former Detective Chief Inspector in the Met. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a mess, isn't it?
It's an awful mess, and it's one of the more visible symptoms of what happens if you remove a large chunk of your police force.
Yeah, absolutely right. But I mean, this is the bit that I don't...
We started that in 2010 and it's still going.
Well, this is the bit I don't get, because it seems to me we've decriminalised shoplifting. It seems OK, you can nick 200 quid's worth of goods and walk out of the shop and no one does anything about it. Meanwhile, the government keeps telling us, oh, we've got loads more police coming in, so they say they've got tons more police. But actually, in terms of actual numbers of police, it's another 3,000. The rest are made up of specials and PCSOs.
Yes, you need to look into the detail of the various statistics about the rises in crime levels as well as the rises in police numbers that we've seen in the last few years, following years and years of decline in those numbers. We've got special constables. They're great. They're fine. They've got the full powers of police officers. There's no difference between the powers they have and the powers of a regular full-time constable. But, of course, they're volunteer officers. And so there's a limit on what the management can do in terms of saying you will be on duty at this or that time. It's very much when those officers are able to fit that in amongst their other commitments, family and work-wise. So there's an issue there. PCSOs, they're not police officers. They're effectively citizens wearing a uniform with no additional powers. They've got a few limited additional powers, but they suffer from the same issue as security staff do, which is the managers of those PCSOs have to ask themselves, what am I asking these people to do? And are they properly trained, equipped and empowered to deal properly with that and safely with that? And if not, they're told don't get involved. And so where your constable will have personal protection training repeated every year, they'll have handcuffs, they'll have batons, they'll have CS or other incapacitant spray. Many of them will have tasers. The PCSOs don't have that. Some of them in some areas might carry handcuffs, but beyond that, they won't have anything more. And so they can't be asked to get involved in confrontational situations, just the same as the uniformed security staff in retail premises. And what that gives us is a situation where, as we're seeing in the footage that's being played alongside this, some people with some justification think they can just wander in and do whatever they like and no one will intervene in that enterprise. Well, if a police vehicle happened to be going past and someone flagged it down, they'd be finding no, it hadn't been decriminalised, and they would be getting arrested and they would be finding...
And that's good to hear, Peter. Thanks very much. This is Talk.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. A shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in or far ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia. These are the missiles that Biden has approved for the...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Hello, very good morning to you. It's just after 9 o'clock on Thursday, January the 2nd. I'm David Bull, in for Mike Graham. This is Morning Glory. A very good morning to you and Happy New Year. Now in the programme, America under attack. Now first, New Year's celebrations were rocked in New Orleans after a pickup truck was rammed into a crowd of revelers, killing at least 15 people. Then in Las Vegas, a Tesla Cybertruck burst into flames outside the Trump Hotel, killing one person. Elon Musk suggested that both incidents were acts of terrorism and potentially linked in some way. Authorities, the latest in the States, say they're looking into a possible military connection between the suspect in the New Orleans attack and the man who died in the Tesla Cybertruck explosion in Vegas. Law enforcement are already looking into the fact that both men used the same app. This is Turo, the car app to rent the vehicles used in both of those incidents. Now, since we've been on air, further developments. ABC News 7 in New York reporting that multiple people have been shot near a music venue in Queens in New York. This is according to local police. Other reports suggest at least 10 people have been shot at the nightclub. Those are the latest news headlines coming out of the United States. Now, meanwhile, here in the United Kingdom, Musk has also turned up the temperature on Labour's Jess Phillips. Now, she has shut down calls from Oldham Council for a public inquiry into the grooming gang scandal. Musk says Jess Phillips should go to prison. Plus, Keir Starmer has also introduced new laws, or is introducing new laws, to tackle people smuggling. Gangs, the big question this morning, do they go far enough? Essentially, criminals could face bans on travel, on internet, and they can't use a mobile phone. But is that enough? Your thoughts, please. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. You can also message us on X as well at TalkTV. Well, a very good morning to you. Thank you very much for your company. We've been concentrating on the events in the United States. As I was saying, of course, this driver who ran over people in New Orleans, bodies strewn everywhere, according to the eyewitness reports. Also, the Tesla Cybertruck exploding outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, and now multiple people being shot in New York. Joining me now is Chris Philp, MP, Shadow Home Secretary. A very good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning, David, and Happy New Year to you and your viewers as well.
Thanks ever so much. And to you, first of all, if I may, your thoughts on what is unfolding in the United States, these separate incidents. They do seem to be linked. The FBI now believe they are linked through this app, the way that the vehicles were rented through Turo. But obviously shocking news on a day, the 2nd of January, or the 1st of January as it was then. This is the new year. It's meant to be full of optimism and hope and peace on earth and goodwill to all men. That has been shattered.
That's right, it has. And as you say, the new year is a time for looking forward. It's a time for optimism, hope about the future. But for these victims and their families, that has been cruelly cut short. So my thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families as they contemplate a very bleak 2025. As you say, this appears to be an act of terrorism. Both the FBI and President Biden have said that the perpetrator had ISIS or Daesh materials in his car. Daesh is, of course, ISIS is, of course, an extremist Islamist organization. Apparently, he'd been viewing ISIS material on YouTube as well. So the US authorities have said this is a terrorist incident, apparently motivated by Islamist extremism. And my thoughts are also with American law enforcement as they seek to investigate what has happened and whether other people were involved. As you said a second ago, the FBI have suggested that the perpetrator in New Orleans, Shamsuddin Jabbar, did not act alone. And I'm sure all of us will be wishing to express support for the FBI and other American law enforcement agencies as they try and identify and apprehend anybody else who may have been involved in this terrorist plot.
Now, as you say, of course, the FBI believes he didn't act alone. Jabbar, actually born in Texas, served in the military. According to the family, he started to convert to Islam. He attacked an area in New Orleans, which is known for its bar culture. It's fairly hedonistic, I think it's fair to say. It's pretty much everything that ISIS espouses to hate about Western society. Are you worried, or should we be worried about copycat attacks here in the United Kingdom?
Well, I think we should be concerned about the threat posed by Islamist terror attacks. We have seen a number of Islamist attacks over recent years happen on UK soil. Of course, many, many more have been foiled by counter-terrorism policing and the security services, besides those that have tragically taken place. So I think all of us should do everything we can to support CT policing and the security services, and in particular, if anybody from any community in the UK comes across information that suggests individuals or groups are being radicalised, then I think there is a moral obligation on everybody from all communities to report any evidence of radicalisation to the police immediately so they can do their work to try and prevent terrorist atrocities happening on British soil.
Can we move on to immigration, because we now have the totals of the number of illegal migrants coming to the United Kingdom, 36,818 in 2024, the second highest year since records began in 2018. Of course, this was part of the Conservative manifesto when you were in government to stop the crossings, the illegal crossings into this country. Keir Starmer says he is going to smash the gangs. I see absolutely no evidence of that at all. He talks about the new Border Security Command, bringing all these agencies together, and yet we see people still coming over to this country. When you look at the sheer numbers, 150,000 illegal migrants crossing since the small boats crisis began, that is an enormous number of people, a town the size of Cambridge or Ipswich or Blackpool. But now, in terms of the Border Security and Asylum Bill, the government says, well, what we're going to do, we'll enact powers, we'll take away your internet, we'll put you in the naughty corner, we'll take away your mobile phone. Is that enough?
No, it's not. I mean, the idea that threatening to take away a people smuggler's mobile phone or ban them from going on holiday, the idea that's going to make any difference is completely laughable. Keir Starmer's claim to want to smash the gangs is pretty ridiculous. He voted against life sentences for those very same gangs in opposition. We have seen the illegal crossings surge under Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper. They've gone up by 29% since the general election compared to the same time the previous year, whereas the previous year, 2023, in government, we actually managed to get the numbers down by about a third. Now, the National Crime Agency say that law enforcement alone, important though it is never going to be enough. What you need is a deterrent, so that if people cross the channel, they know they're going to quickly get returned somewhere else. Now, we had that lined up. We had the Rwanda scheme ready to go. We'd passed a new law through Parliament to deal with all the legal challenges. And the first flight was due to take off on the 24th of July, but Labour cancelled it before it even had a chance to depart. And that is part of the reason why the numbers of illegal immigrants crossing the channel has gone up so much under Labour since the general election. So the first thing the Labour government should do, if they are serious about tackling illegal immigration, is reinstate that deterrent. It's common sense that if people know they're going to get quickly returned somewhere else like Rwanda, they're not going to bother crossing in the first place. We saw something very similar work in Australia about 10 years ago, where they actually completely stopped their illegal maritime arrivals. So we know it works. We should do it here. And it was a massive mistake by Labour that they cancelled that plan before it even started.
Just two quick questions on that. I think it is absolutely fair to say that you are right in that Rwanda at least had some form of deterrent. We never saw it through. All the measures had been put in place. Also, we saw migrants then going to Ireland then complaining. So there was some sort of effect of Rwanda. If Labour does decide to swallow its pride and say, right, we will reinstate the Rwanda plan, how straightforward is that to do?
Well, I think it could definitely be done. The agreement with Rwanda had obviously been reached and signed and sealed and delivered under the last Conservative government. There were legal challenges, both in Strasbourg and in our own Supreme Court, but we passed a special law through Parliament, the Safety of Rwanda Act, which went through the last Parliament. It is on the statute books. It was signed by the monarch. It is in law. So the legal work has been done. So it actually would be very straightforward to restart that scheme that we had prepared, and I call on the government to do that. You know, I know they cancelled it 6 months ago, massive mistake by Labour, but it's not too late. They should do a U-turn in our national interest, because the approach the Labour government has tried to take is quite clearly not working. They've had 6 months, they have completely failed, they have lost control of our borders, and so they should swallow their pride and reinstate the Rwanda scheme, a scheme that we saw work in Australia about 10 years ago in very similar circumstances.
Could I ask you finally, if I may, for a comment on Jess Phillips, because Elon Musk has turned up the temperature on this row over grooming gangs. This is because Jess Phillips has shut down calls for a public inquiry into the scandal that was going on, the child abuse scandal in Oldham. She says there's no need for a public inquiry. Elon Musk has come out and said Jess Phillips needs to go to prison.
Do you want to try and hotspot?
Oh, I think we've lost you there, Chris. We'll try and get Chris back. I'm keen to get his view on Elon Musk basically saying that that Jess Phillips should go to prison for not having a public inquiry. Let's now join Ryan Saby, Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. A very good morning to you, Ryan.
Good morning, David.
First of all, your thoughts, please, on what is going on in America. This has all happened, really, since we've been on air. So we've seen these incidents in New Orleans, just shocking incidents in New Orleans of this man driving towards people, killing people, maiming people, bodies everywhere. Then we saw the Tesla Cybertruck explode outside the Trump Hotel. That's in Vegas. Now we've got multiple people being shot at a music venue in Queens in New York. It seems there may be some link. The FBI are talking about both vehicles being rented through the same app. This is Turo, the app there. And obviously, Biden addressed the nation, addressed the United States, talking about that. But they're talking about terrorism. They're talking about America being under attack.
Yeah, no, very, very difficult situation. And I think that the thing is, I think once you found that ISIS flag in the vehicle, it obviously leads to links to terrorism, and obviously the FBI are going to be working round the clock now to establish the facts on both incidents, and also to find out whether they are actually linked. So the FBI, they'll be working literally non-stop to get to the bottom of this, and we just hope they do, and our thoughts are with the families of everyone who's been affected out there.
Now, just in terms of that, I was just asking Chris Philp whether we should be concerned about copycat attacks in this country. As I said, this is the new year. It was meant to be filled with optimism and hope for, particularly for peace around the world. How concerned should politicians be here in the UK, do you think, about copycat attacks?
I think they should be concerned. I think the trouble is we've seen, obviously, these incidents in America over the last 24, 36 hours. We had the incident in Germany just before Christmas at those Christmas markets. And it seems that this is it's a tactic that's been used in the past, and it's things that I think that this country and councils almost up and down the country, if there are big public events, they have to be very, very assured of that they have the security implications and the security measures in place. That they make sure they have barriers there for if there are large gatherings. And we also see that incident over in New York overnight as well. So everyone has to be on alert, and it'll be interesting to see what the Home Secretary has to say about this, and whether the state the terror alert threat is raised, or whether there are any extra words of concern, or how the police need to react to this.
Now, as we come into the new year, there is no doubt that immigration remains the #1 concern for people in this country. They feel the previous government did not get control of illegal immigration, and certainly this government hasn't got control of illegal immigration. Well, we have the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill coming through. You and I spoke over the last couple of days about Starmer and his popularity ratings being dismal, and that what he needs to do is to have a restart this year. And they've announced this morning that anyone suspected of being involved in people smuggling or serious crime may well get a ban on travel, or they'll take their internet away, their mobile phone away. Well, that makes no sense at all, given that you can easily get another mobile phone, and many of these gangs are operated from outside the United Kingdom, so it will make no difference at all. Is it just rhetoric in your view?
I think they're trying to do as much as they can, or what they think may send a signal to people smugglers. But I think in reality, if you're trying to get to this country, you see yourself as wanting to get a better life here, and then you're involved in these people smuggling gangs. I don't think the fact that taking away mobile phones, or making sure you can't go on Twitter or Facebook to communicate with people who want to come across is going to make much difference. And as you say, it's not just the gangs in this country. They are talking to the gangs across Europe, across the world. And if you do want to tackle this, it's not only has to be done in this country, it has to be done upstream. And I think this is, obviously everything is welcome to try and smash this, but I'm not quite sure it's going to put off people smuggling gangs who are earning can be earning tens of thousands of pounds per person for anyone who comes across.
There is a real sense, I think, in the country that the public feel they're not being told the whole truth about what is going on. And also, this feeds into this other story about the historic child abuse in Oldham, because Jess Phillips has shut down calls for a public inquiry. Now, Elon Musk has waded into that. He says Jess Phillips should be ashamed, and I'm paraphrasing, but she should be in prison. That is a problem for Starmer, another problem for Starmer.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Oldham and the investigation and the public inquiry, I think there may be concerns if the politicians, Labour politicians, asked for an inquiry before they got elected, and they've now got into power, and they've said, look, there should be an inquiry, but it shouldn't be a judge-led public inquiry. It should be more of an inquiry led locally. And I think if they go down that route, or they let Oldham Council set this up, obviously at vast expense to Oldham Council, I think that's where the problem lies. I think it's saying one thing in opposition and then saying another thing in government that has riled people. And
but that's also what we saw with the WASPy women, wasn't it? Campaigning with the WASPy women, and then saying, "Oh, we're in government, we're going to change our mind." That's why faith in politics is at such an all-time low.
Yeah, no, exactly. And if you want the Oldham Council to lead this inquiry into grooming gangs, it's clearly going to cost several millions of pounds. why wouldn't you let central government take on the costs, and it would have perhaps more power? So perhaps that could be an option. And you just wonder, with the political pressure, with the likes of Elon Musk getting involved, whether there could be a change of plan on that in the coming days if that pressure mounts. But as you say, again, with the WASP women, we have the likes of Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, the Welfare Secretary, Liz Kendall, all saying that the women who are in their 60s now should get a fair solution to the issues around a pension age and the state pension. They get into government and they say there's not enough money, and enough women knew about this who are impacted, and they don't need to get that money because they're fully aware of the rules. That's the problem, saying one thing in opposition and doing another in government.
Ryan, always good to talk to you. Happy New Year. Ryan Sabia, their deputy political editor of The Sun newspaper. Lots of messages coming in. Let's take a voice note now. This is Darren talking about migrant crossings. Good morning.
Morning, David. Happy New Year to you. Darren from Suffolk. We found a solution ages ago. Just have an agreement with France. Tell them that anyone comes over will go back on the next ferry. It will stop within 2 days. And there's a solution. And then agree with France some sort of compensation. We give them more fishing rights, or basically we just agree on a quota, but people coming in will have to have a passport or ID. Simple, sorted, 2 days.
Well done, Darren. You should be Home Secretary. Problem sorted, solved 2 days. That's the whole point, as many politicians are saying, that actually we have the right to turn those boats back. And actually, if you did what Australia did, which is you sit the Royal Navy in the Channel, turn the boats back, it will soon stop, wouldn't it? But there doesn't seem to be the political will to do that. Let's take a break. Keep all those messages coming in, please. Also, your thoughts, please, on what is unfolding in the United States. How concerned are you about copycat attacks here in the United Kingdom as well? More details emerging of that, about multiple people also being shot in the venue in Queens in New York. The number 0344 499 1000. After the break, we're going to be talking about this issue which just won't go away. This is the levying of VAT on private schools. Now, apparently it won't raise enough to hit the new teacher target. That's what the Labour government is saying. They're saying, oh, well, we're going to raise £1.6 billion. It's going to pay for all these teachers in the state system. Lots of questions over this. How many kids from independent schools are actually going to leave the independent sector because the parents simply can't afford to send them to those schools anymore? I'm going to be talking to Mark Lahan, who's Executive Head Teacher of Wootton Trust, a former advisor at the Department for Education. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
It's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. I'm Mike Graham and this, of course, is Talk. I think he was shocked. You can see the genuine shock.
I was like that.
Sees the boats coming in. Right, let's have the women and children first. He went, oh, just you lads, is it?
Yeah. He's been allowed to develop into this huge sort of problem for the BBC.
Yeah.
He'd love it, wouldn't he?
He would love it. That's why we're not doing it.
That's why we're not doing it.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
This is Talk Morning Glory, 9:26, Thursday, January the 2nd. We're dissecting what's going on in the United States. Of course, this vehicle being driven into civilians in New Orleans, killing 15 people, injuring many others as well. Bodies strewn all over the place. The Cybertruck exploding in Las Vegas outside the Trump Hotel. Now a shooting in Queens in New York. The latest line out of the United States. Authorities are looking into a possibly military connection between the suspect in the New Orleans attack and a man who died in the Cybertruck explosion in Vegas. Law enforcement are also looking into the fact that both of these men used the same app to hire the cars. This is an app called Turo. That is what they are looking at. Now, what we do know, this man who drove that vehicle in New Orleans has been named as Shamsuddin Bahar Jabbar, 42, a US national who served in the military. As we know, he sped into Bourbon Street in the heart of the French Quarter in New Orleans in the early hours, killing 15 people, injuring at least 35. What we also know is that he had an ISIS and IS flag in that car. He also, according to the paper, had a handgun, an automatic rifle similar to a Colt AR-15. In the cool box in the truck were several homemade bombs. Now, what is interesting about this is this man had previously made a video, a piece to camera, talking about himself. He was a real estate agent, and this video makes you realise he comes across as a very normal man, a normal US citizen, far removed from anyone that you might consider a terrorist. Let's take a look.
Good evening. I'm Shamsuddin Jabbar, property manager with Blue Metal Properties and team lead at the Midas Group at Core Realty. I just want to say hello and let you know a little bit about me. So I'm born and raised in Beaumont, Texas, and now live in Houston. And I've been here all my life, with the exception of traveling for the military, where I spent 10 years as a human resources specialist and IT specialist, where I learned the meaning of great service and what it means to be responsive and take everything seriously, dotting I's and crossing T's to make sure that things go off without a hitch.
Your thoughts, 0344 499 1000. I was also talking to Chris Philp, MP, Shadow Home Secretary, saying the United Kingdom should be aware of copycat attacks. Of course, nations on high alert as a result of the incidents in the United States. We'll bring you more on that as and when we get it. Let's move on now and talk about this topic that just won't go away, and that is the imposition of VAT on private school fees. Well, the latest line, if you recall, the Labour Party said they would actually be able to recruit 6,500 extra teachers by the imposition of VAT onto private schools. Well, that's about 1.5 billion they estimate they will get back. But in the Times this morning, it says that is totally untrue. In fact, to recruit 6,500 extra teachers would cost £5 billion a year. So once again, the Labour Party mathematics does not add up. Back to school for them. Mark Lahane, Executive Head Teacher of Wootton Trust and a former advisor to the Department for Education, joins me now. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
This is ideological, it's ill thought through, they've slapped VAT on private schools, they don't understand. The vast majority of parents who send their kids to private schools aren't wealthy, they often do multiple jobs, they put their children first and foremost, they want them to have a good education, and now they're being penalised even though they're already paying for state education.
I mean, the interesting thing about this policy is we're now seeing in real time happening exactly what lots of us warned would happen when the policy was announced when Labour in opposition a couple of years ago. So no one ever knew, and no one really knows how much money that it will raise for the government, because we don't know how much of the extra tax and costs are going to be passed on to families. We're going to find that out over the next 6 months or so. We don't know how many families will then pull their children out of the private schools and put them into state schools, and therefore that money won't be gained. And also we don't know how many children will move into state schools, and therefore how much extra cost there will be for the government to pay for those places in state schools. It's a bit of a mess. And on top of that, the thing I've always wanted to know is where are these 6,500 extra teachers that we're being promised? Because if the Labour Party knew where they were when they were in opposition, it would have been nice if we could have been told then, because we could have done with those extra teachers back in the day. So it feels like a bit of a mess. But let's be really clear, the government are perfectly entitled to do this. It was in the manifesto. It was on this basis that lots of people voted for them. It's just really sad that we're going to see the consequences of that policy right now.
So you're right to question where are these 6,500 teachers. They're obviously sitting on some cloud somewhere that we're not familiar with. But I'd also like to know, for these children leaving the independent sector, where are the school places in the state system?
Well, the interesting thing is there are, across the country, across England, there are enough spare places in schools for quite a few number of kids to move from independent schools into state schools.
How many do we think?
Well, there probably are at any given time within an area. There could be anything between a few hundred in a local authority or a few dozen. The question is, are the places in the right, are the spaces in schools available in the right places, in the right schools for those children? And we are hearing across the system quite a few horror stories from families moving their children mid-year and really struggling to find their kids a place in the school that they want to send them to.
And that's the bit that I think is the most vindictive. It's in the middle of the school year, the kids are settled, they've got their friends, they're concentrating on their homework, and suddenly the government decides, oh, this is a brilliant idea, we'll disrupt your education. I'm sorry, that is not a duty of care.
Well, and of course, for lots of independent schools, you have to give them at least a full term's notice if you're going to pull your child out. And this policy wasn't passed until the early autumn, so lots of families were already committed to this financial year. I mean, listen, education, there's a bigger question here. Education in virtually every country on the planet is recognised as a charitable endeavour. We also have to be honest, OK? Lots of our independent schools, the ones that we're thinking of, the big, really expensive ones, they have lost track of their local community. They're not embedded in their local towns and cities and rural areas these days. They have focused largely on basically kids coming from wealthy, rich families. We can't deny that. Most families can't afford private school fees. However, there are lots of smaller independent schools doing a fantastic job, particularly in the special education sector, or particularly serving smaller communities that aren't the Eatons. They haven't got amazing facilities. They're getting by, and they're really serving lots of families.
But there's one other thing that... But there's one other thing that
hammered by this tax increase. They're the ones I'm most worried about.
100%. But also the other thing the Labour government doesn't seem to understand is actually these independent schools offer bursaries to those people who are less well off. Now, if they don't have the revenue and the income, those bursaries will go, so the scholarships will be out the window. Also, they open their sports facilities. This is part of the deal to be a charitable or to have charitable status. They open their state-of-the-art sports facilities to local children and local families, as they do where I live. And that will stop.
Absolutely, they're going to have to make savings where they can, and it's really important that you've mentioned the bursaries things. In recent times, lots of independent schools have been offering far more places to children to come to them regardless of their ability to pay, particularly children from that are in the care system that could really benefit from the stability of a boarding school and independent school. The number of schools offering those bursaries are now collapsing because they've got to make savings elsewhere. So the most vulnerable kids who would have most benefited from going to private schools are the ones that are losing out the most. And we mustn't forget as well, this is at the same time that this government are taking away state schools' freedoms to innovate and improve things for their children, because they're going to force a new national curriculum on all state schools like the ones that I run. They're going to take away the freedom that head teachers like myself have in terms of how we can employ staff and how we can deploy them, because in a law that they're going to pass, they are going to determine the pay and conditions upon which I can appoint people. So this isn't just the independent sector that's facing these changes right now. The whole state education system in England is about to lose a lot of the freedoms that have made it become one of the most successful school systems in the world. And that's the thing your viewers and listeners need to know. Schools in England have got so much better over the last 10, 15 years. You can see it in the international rankings against other countries in maths, English and science. The very things that helped us do that are now at risk.
And also BBC Verify, there's another line this morning. BBC Verify says that private school fee rises after the VAT raid don't matter to parents. That's a load of tosh. Of course they matter to parents. I'll gloss over that. But just in terms of the sheer numbers, 500,000 kids in independent education, that saves about 4.5 billion quid to the Treasury. Now, if you see this exodus, which we think we will see, so 5,500 already leaving the independent sector, 10,000 fewer pupils enrolling. So if the numbers are way out of kilter, which is probably accurate given the government's track record in getting numbers right, then the government is going to be in for a nasty shock.
Yes, and also over time, the number of people that we'll see going into the independent sector is likely to fall lots, because people that maybe would have chosen to enter their child into a primary school age 4 or a secondary school age 11, they won't do that. They'll come into the state system, so there'll be less tax raised and more money needed to be spent in state schools, whereas lots of people that are in the system at the moment will probably try and eke it out until their child finishes primary school or finishes their GCSEs. So we could see a big change in the numbers. We could see far less money raised. We could see far more people come into the state system. So overall, the government may end up worse off, and they may find they're putting more pressure on the state system, which is already struggling with a shortage of teachers in subjects like science and maths and computing. It's a really tricky time right now, because no one really knows how it's going to pan out. And like I said, you have to look at it in the broader context that there's loads of more restrictions and rules going to be imposed on state schools generally to make it harder for us to deal with the children that we teach.
Mark, thank you for your time. That's Mark Lehane there, Executive Head Teacher at Wootton Trust, former advisor to the Department for Education. Lots of you getting in touch. Let's take in the voice note now. This is Ash talking about Oldham Council wanting a public inquiry into the grooming gangs. Good morning.
Morning, David. Ash from Preston. Great show. I'm not defending Jess Phillips here, but Oldham Council...
Oh, I seem to have lost you.
Council had the chance to have an inquiry quite a while ago, and they turned round and decided they didn't want to do it either, because I believe they are just as culpable as Greater Manchester Police, as the authorities and as the governments, both Tory and Labour, who allowed this to go on. Cheers, great show.
Thanks ever so much. And, of course, Elon Musk has been wading into this, saying that because Jess Phillips has shut down that inquiry into the historic child abuse in Oldham, that she deserves to go to prison. I would have said that they need to improve relations with the United States, given that Trump is going to be in power in, 18 days' time. Let's take a break. Keep all your messages coming in, please. Loads of them on immigration, for example. Also about this new idea that criminals are going to have their phones taken away and they have to sit in the naughty corner. Lots of you commenting on that as well. Also, working from home. I've just been told, David, you are a dinosaur. I worked from home for 15 years for a large IT company. It worked beautifully. All you need are properly trained managers and a good management system. Lots of you have an opposing view. I'll read some of those out as well after this break. But after the break, I'm going to be talking about skilled migration. Apparently, it's now an open borders racket. Kevin Saunders, former Border Force Chief Immigration Officer, will be joining me after this break. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, earlier on, I was talking to Molly Johnson about the benefits of home working. Many of you getting in contact. Gerdy Gatora, one of our regulars. Good morning to you, Gerdy. Molly Johnson is deluded. She only got dressed because she's appearing on TV. Before the COVID, everyone used to travel to work. Now, my son, who works from home, cannot communicate with people face to face, and it's impacting on people's social communication skills. Good morning, David, says Peter M. in Bishop Auckland. Good morning to you. I think if all these lazy bones want to work from home, let them go self-employed. They're just dragging the work ethic into the gutter. Good morning, Steve from Mansfield. Good morning, David. No way would I give up a room or any space in my home for workspace. Last thing you need at home is anything to do with work. Your home is your castle. Also, Andy in Thatcham says, if she says it's impossible to measure performance of those working from home, how can she state that the majority of working from home employees aren't in their pyjamas? Aha! Good point. Well said. Right, let's take a call. Alice is on the line from Hampshire. Good morning to you.
Good morning, David, and Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, good. Happy New Year. So working from home, it's just lazy people, isn't it, sitting there in their pants on Zoom calls?
Well, what nobody seems to have raised is normally in an office you have a desk at the right height, you have a proper chair.
Yep.
Whereas people at home, where's health and safety? Aren't they lying themselves for backache, neck-ache?
Very true.
Yeah, repetitive strain injury, because they're sitting at a dining room table, a dining room chair, not proper thing to sit for hours.
I mean, it's really interesting that about if the difference between someone who is employed by a company working from home and someone who is self-employed. I'm self-employed. So therefore, if I don't work, I don't get paid. There is an onus to make some money, or at least to make sure that you have very high productivity. I do think it's important people go to the office. I don't know how often they need to do that, but I do think it's important because you talk and you bounce off each other. You have ideas. You're more creative. There's camaraderie. You go for drinks. We're losing all of that.
Home is very isolating, and people have been going on about how isolated and they were during the pandemic doing lockdown. Well, they're just repeating a lockdown.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, Alice, so do you think that just in terms of the public sector, you're paying for it, I'm paying for it, public sector employees, should they be allowed to work from home? They should be in the office.
And if they want to work from home, no London waiting.
Ooh, that's interesting. Very interesting. So you're saying basically because they're saving all the money on the travel, so then they get a reduced salary.
Yeah, 100%, because the London waiting is supposed to cover their travel.
Alice, really good to hear from you. Alice in Hampshire, they're talking about working from home. Let's talk about this other big story in the Telegraph this morning. This is skilled migration. We spent a lot of time talking about illegal migration into this country, but when you actually look at the sheer numbers of people who've been allowed into this country, 946, I've got to get this right, 1,000, I think, brought in the last year. Then you have to ask yourself, how do we get the schools, the hospitals, the infrastructure? How on earth can we build for that? Well, this says skilled migration is now an open borders racket. Kevin Saunders, former Border Force Chief Immigration Officer, joins me now. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, David.
Your thoughts on this? I mean, this has been going on for a very long time, hasn't it, about a points-based system. I remember Boris Johnson saying, we'll attract the best and the brightest people into this country. We'll limit the number of unskilled migrants that come to this country. But when you look at actually, even when you apply those kind of things, when you look at the numbers of people who are coming legally, only about 15% of them are actually working. The rest of them are all the lackeys they bring with them, whether it's their parents, their spouse, and so on. And we've lost control completely of our borders.
Yes, I mean, that is partly true. You get the one person coming in, they bring their wife, their kids, their mother-in-law, great auntie Doris, great uncle Fred. Oh, and then don't forget the nephews as well. So you bring in one person, and they try to bring in not only their family, their extended family as well. And, of course, that's a big problem.
It's a huge problem. Also, just in terms of this, and I wonder what your view is, immigrants are supposed to earn $38,700, but huge numbers seem to earn less than that because there are so many loopholes. If you're under 26, for example, there's a loophole there. If you've got certain qualifications, there's a loophole here. We've been too reliant on cheap foreign labour for far too long, and actually what we've done is we've ignored homegrown talent, and that's what we should be doing, is putting people who are born in this country into really good jobs with great prospects so they can earn a living and contribute.
Well, yes, we should indeed. It's quite interesting. I've just spent almost 3 weeks in hospital, and the ancillary staff were nearly all Brits, but the medical staff were nearly all non-Brits. And I thought that quite interesting, really.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, I don't know. I put it down to probably the lack of training facilities for doctors in the UK. I mean, I hear rumours that some universities are in so much trouble that they're looking at having to close their medical facilities.
I mean, it's really complicated. Obviously, it takes time to train doctors. It's easier to import them from overseas, but I maintain that we need to train our own. I mean, to be fair to Rishi Sunak, he increased the number of medical school places. It's also worth remembering the British Medical Association, the union for doctors, were the ones that imposed that cap in the first place. But we're going off on a tangent slightly. Just in your experience as being in immigration, as being the former Border Force Chief Immigration Officer, do you think our rules are too lax?
Oh yeah, completely. We're a soft touch. We always have been. We always will be, until you get a government that really wants to slap down on immigration. You see, we got a system now whereby you do something and immediately the courts are all over you like a rash. We saw this with Rwanda, and this will happen over almost anything that people don't like.
And in your experience, any government, and we've talked a great deal about this morning, that immigration is the number one issue for people in this country, whether that's illegal immigration or legal migration. I think many people are looking at policies enacted by successive governments saying this is an abject failure. You can't have nearly 1 million people coming here in a single year because it's untenable. What would be the best way to do this? Is the points-based system the right way to do it? Is there a simpler way?
Well, you've got to stop illegal migration first. Then you can look at what we've got, what we need, and what we can actually afford. And then you say, right, we need 20,000 doctors. OK, let's allocate 20,000 visas for doctors. We need another X amount for various other things. And that's what you've got to do. And Parliament has got to decide on that.
Absolutely. Kevin, really good to talk to you. Happy New Year to you. Kevin Saunders, former Border Force Chief Immigration Officer. Lots of messages coming in. This is Don in South Wales. People who have to work in the office sound jealous to me. As for the caller who talked about NECE, what a load of tosh. HSE guidelines, Health and Safety Executive, that is, guidelines for home working are followed with most good businesses. Really? Also, get over it, he says. Stay in your lane. Do your job. I am, and I'm in the office. Lots of others, thanks very much. Happy New Year, by the way, and to you as well. David, your guest Ryan just said some migrants are paying tens of thousands of pounds to come over the channel. Where are they getting the money to pay that? Happy New Year, Doctor. This is Donna in Birmingham. I take my granddaughter's phone off her when she's misbehaved. What's next? Is this government going to do with the smugglers? Put them on the naughty step. Yes, well said indeed. Others have said exactly the same as well. Hi, David. This is Michelle. Good morning. People have to realise they're being lied to with regards to illegal immigration. There is no intention to stop it. That is crystal clear. They could stop it overnight if they wanted to. Things are going to get worse and worse. This idea ideological agenda being forced on us by this government is just simply dangerous. Keep all those messages coming in, please. The number 0344 499 1000. You can also send a voicemail as well. We'll take a break. More of your thoughts, your comments, your messages, calls after this break. This is Morning Glory. Good morning.
Saturday night, and you lucky people have got 4 of Talk's mightiest personalities in one room. I mean, what could go right? Me, Jeremy Kyle, Michael Graham, Julia, I'm Not Grumpy Tonight, Hartley Brewer and Kev O'Sullivan. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
What are you thinking? Jules is smiling.
I think they've made us all look a lot better than we actually look.
Well, I know what to ask for next time I go to the hairdresser.
I'd like to talk about Jez's nipples on his...
You got nipples? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got nipples.
I
didn't think you had nipples. I assumed you just came in an egg.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Welcome back. The final part of Morning Glory this morning on Thursday, January the 2nd. Thanks very much for all your comments. Let's take a voice note now. Kim, talking about private schools. Good morning to you.
Good morning, David. Kim from near Bristol here. If you told most people, I think, who voted Labour in 97, that in 2024 we'd be taxing education anywhere in the sector, I think they'd have laughed. I'm one of those not wealthy parents that's putting my daughter through independent school. Now, she's loving it and she's doing really well despite her SEN challenges. And I'm myself now also volunteering at the school as well in the CCF. So it's transforming our lives for the better and helping so many children. And it's all now at risk because we may not be able to sustain the term payments, and they've increased about 20%. We were just about managing before with sacrifices, and now it's on a knife edge. I just want Labour to realise that many parents with kids in these schools aren't wealthy. I'm on a single income with a disabled husband and son. At the very least, shouldn't this tax be means tested? Anyway, keep asking the right questions, David. Great show.
Oh, thanks very much. I'm so sorry. I mean, this is what we hear the whole time. Also, just the government has just such a lack of grip of this subject. The fact is, they said that actually the schools would only pass on, say, 10% of the 20% increase, that VAT increase being added to the fees. We now know that actually most schools are adding about 15 to 20% onto the school fees. This is pure ideology over practicality. The numbers don't add up. The parents are really suffering. The children are really suffering. And yet they haven't got the courage to back down, because it doesn't make any economic sense whatsoever. Also this morning we're talking about the events in America, of course, the shocking incident in New Orleans, also the Cybertruck exploding in Vegas as well, and now authorities looking into a possible military connection between the suspect in the New Orleans attack and the man who died in Vegas in the Cybertruck explosion. President Biden addressed the nation. This is what he said.
The FBI is leading the investigation to determine what happened, why it happened, and whether there was any continuing threat to public safety. Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby.
Well, earlier on, I spoke to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. I asked him about the risks of copycat attacks here in the United Kingdom and whether he was concerned about Islamic attacks on UK shores.
Well, I think we should be concerned about the threat posed by Islamist terror attacks. We have seen a number of Islamist attacks over recent years happen on UK soil. Of course, many, many more have been foiled by counter-terrorism policing and the security services, besides those that have tragically taken place. So I think all of us should do everything we can to support CT policing and the security services, and in particular, if anybody from any community in the UK comes across information that suggests individuals or groups are being radicalised, then I think there is a moral obligation on everybody from all communities to report any evidence of radicalisation to the police immediately, so they can do their work to try and prevent terrorist atrocities happening on British soil.
Chris Philp, Shadow Home Secretary, speaking to me earlier. Of course, we'll keep you up to date on the latest developments in the United States as and when they happen here on Talk. Russell Quirk joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning and Happy New Year to you.
Yes, and to you.
When did we stop saying that? Do you know? Is it about Monday?
No, another week or so, I think.
OK.
Well, maybe a month.
OK, let's see.
Well, you've got to have some optimism.
Well, I guess, particularly with the news as it is today.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're back with a bang, aren't we?
Very much so. Well, absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely shocking. And I said, you know, look, the New Year's meant to be optimistic and you're meant to have high hopes for the future, and we wanted world peace and